In North Korea, an unexplored land, everyone is gathering here. A young man cautiously watched the masked individuals before him. At this moment, a middle-aged man slowly approached and smiled as he greeted, "Hey kid, is this your first time joining the expedition team?" The young man forced a smile as he took the glass of water and said, "I have been to dungeons and portals before, but this is the first time I've come to an unexplored land. So I might be a bit nervous." "Thank you." The middle-aged man also laughed and said, "Haha, it's best to prepare yourself well. The unexplored region is the monster's hell, a place that hasn't been cultivated for hundreds of years, where ancient monsters are swarming everywhere." The young man took the initiative to ask, "But isn't the leader of this expedition from the Sunmu clan? I heard he's the younger brother of the current clan head, so he must be very strong." The man next to him rolled his eyes and muttered, "Ah, that guy." The person known as the ninth son of the Sunmu clan appeared. "His name is Reet." The other man then told the young man earlier, "You're just a second son, very weak, even expelled from the clan." He said that not only did he lack talent, but he also had no perseverance. At that age, he was still only a 7th level martial artist. How could anyone trust someone like that? Reet was sitting there when he saw someone approaching him. The masked figure, fully concealed, looked at him and said, "Let's continue moving, expedition leader." Reet silently looked at him. Then he lowered his head in despair and said, "All right." As Reet walked, he thought about the Shadow Sword team, the military unit under the Sunmu clan head, but it didn't feel like a typical escort team. Reet frowned and thought, "This mission seems to have something unusual." Reet remembered, there was a time when I had expectations for my life. That was the first time I realized the power of the name Sunmu clan, when I was chosen by a top-tier weapon during the sword selection ceremony. At that moment, Reet recalled, "I thought, if I kept trying and gradually proving myself, then maybe one day, I would be recognized. But that has never happened before." A bald man wearing glasses pointed at the film and said, "Look here, I've never seen a mana flow like this before." He said, "It's not suitable to learn magic, nor can you practice martial arts steadily." These words struck Reet's heart like a bomb. He told everyone, with a body like that, young Master Reet might not even reach level 9. At that moment, the head of the household just turned his head and sighed in disappointment. Reet thought, ever since my strange physique was discovered, my being chosen in the sword selection ceremony was just an accidental mistake. Even so, I still tried with all my stubbornness, even though they said I would never reach level 9, but I proved my title of level 7 master when I was only 25 years old. For other members of the family, it was just an achievement they had reached in their youth, but I was truly happy. But that joy didn't last long. By the age of 30, Reet had been expelled from the family. Reet recalled, "The only thing that helped me leave intact was thanks to the assistance of the big brother." And then, for the past 10 years, Reet lived like someone who was already dead, running away from everything. Until a period of chaos arrived, everyone gathered around a burning barrel. Newspapers and a few sticks of firewood were taken out as kindling. The unexplored area is expanding, and monsters are attacking more fiercely than ever. At that moment, a newspaper flew with the wind right to his head. On the newspaper are countless sensational headlines. Reet slowly picked it out of her head. Then read through once. The newspaper clearly states, "The prophet Itashin, who has become a star in the sky." Reet trembling, "My father, conversely known as the pinnacle of Korean martial arts, the head of the Sunmu clan, has passed away." At this moment, a footstep appeared from somewhere, calling out, "Ninth young master, young Lord Reet." Reet looked up at the group of people hiding their faces and realized, is it the Shadow Sword team? Reet muttered in confusion, "How did they manage to find me?" The group of people took out a piece of paper and said, "This is an order for the young master." Reet sighed and thought, what a farce. While reading, Reet thought, this cursed bloodline, even in death it won't let me go. Has Lee Gunsung become the head of the family? So, the third brother has taken power? Reet wondered, what about the eldest brother? The person in front of him said, "I will come back in an hour." Reet held the paper and called out, "Wait a minute. You asked the Shadow Sword team, big brother, what happened?" Reet thought, being ignored again, "Can't hear the answer, can I?" He said again, 10 years without wielding a sword, a level 7 martial artist like me, now being summoned to explore an uncharted territory, what does that even mean?" The group turned and asked, "So, young master, are you planning to refuse this order?" Reet looked at the group holding their sword hilts. Refusing orders without a valid reason meant death, so he said, "No, I accept." As soon as the words were spoken, those people did not hesitate any further and immediately disappeared. Reet gritted her teeth, clenched the summons paper tightly, and cursed, "Damn it. Now we return to the present. Reet and everyone go deep into the forest." At this moment, the young man seemed to realize something and exclaimed, "Ah." In front of them was a large building, a relic? How could there be a heritage site here? It's surprising to see a structure preserved so intact right in an unexplored area. One member of the Shadow Blade team said, "Reet, go ahead and enter." Everyone slowly walked inside. Then the whole group was stunned. What on earth is that? In front of them was a ground full of human skulls, and there were even monster ones too. All were immensely shocked. A corpse of an ancient monster? The Shadow Sword team finally revealed themselves and said, "Found it." He ordered his subordinates, "Start moving," and they immediately rushed forward. The young man was just bewilderedly asking what was starting, when his head was suddenly chopped in half by someone. Reed and another person were astonished by this scene. The middle-aged man shouted loudly, "What the hell are you doing?" The member of the Shadow Sword team continued to thrust his sword and said, "Didn't you already know that your fate, sooner or later, is death?" He rushed forward and said, "Consider sacrificing for the family in honor." But right at that moment, his chest suddenly started bleeding heavily. A sword pierced through the man. It was Reed who had struck. He interrogated, "Who ordered you?" "This name is hard to pronounce. The order comes from the master." The man grabbed the sword piercing through him and said, "Take it to this place. And kill as neatly as possible." With that, he effortlessly crushed Reed's sword with one hand. The wound on his chest seemed to have a power that healed immediately. He laughed coldly and said, "Of course, as long as you don't resist." Reed was also extremely shocked. The wound was healing. The man took this moment to charge forward with his sword. Despite his fear, he still advanced, shouting, "Die, die." However, in the next second, a swift sword aura had already severed his head right before his eyes. The sword shadow said smugly, "How pitiful. I had hoped for something more from someone with the Lee surname of the Sunmu clan. But it turned out to be just a useless person." The next second, the sword was pointing directly at Reet. Reet was immediately beaten until he spat out blood. The power of that guy was so strong that it flung Reet several meters away. The pain made him unable to hold back. He both coughed up blood and cried out. Reet gritted her teeth and thought, "Like this, then. But no, I can't die like this. I need a weapon." While Reet was thinking, he looked around. Here is the translation. It was the one. He also found an old sword planted near him. Reet thought to himself, evaluating, a sword strong enough to bring down a giant monster. Even though it had been abandoned for many years, it should still be usable. "Please," Reet looked at it and thought. He quickly rushed forward, gripping tightly onto the hilt of the sword. Then the next second, Reet bewilderedly looked ahead. The sword seemed to emit a dark aura. Reet was terrified by this scene. Why? The swordsman named Kia Man slowly walked forward and said, "The bloodline of the Lee family has fallen to such a disgraceful level. After all, you are still a descendant of the Lee family. I will send you off in the most deserving way." The next second, he immediately slashed a sword at Reet's back. Reet fell down thinking, "Oh God, not even giving me one last chance?" He thought, "Will I really die here?" Collapsed but still conscious, Reet felt discouraged, thinking, "Is my whole life just about struggling to run away? A life full of misfortune?" Reet was still holding that sword tightly in his hand, and the sword was continuously radiating a dark power. Reet thought, if he could be reborn again, at that time. But then a sound rang out, startling Reet. This voice, was it his father's? He slowly opened his eyes, still confused, but wasn't father already dead? In Reet's confusion, the host Sun Muklan, Itation slowly turned his head to look at him. Reet was bewildered, but still looked very young, not only the father but also the steward Choi as well. Reet wanted to call out, "Father," the butler, then he stared in shock at his own hand. What is this? The hand of a child. Reet was stunned and couldn't say a word, immediately turned around. Is this me? Reet has returned to the form of herself as a newborn baby. A voice echoed, "Is this child Yujong's? How is Yujong doing?" Reet frowned, is this voice his father's? Hearing everyone talk, he became even more confused. Strange indeed, clearly, his father had already passed away. Reet looked at the people in the room and thought, but he looks so young, not only father but also butler Choi. Reet raised her hand, wanting to call her father and the butler, then was startled again to see his tiny little hands. He was astonished, "Isn't this me, Reet Minnie?" Reet lay in the crib, utterly bewildered. What is going on? Clearly, I was already dead. Could this be the world after death, or is it just a flashback before dying? Taishan looked at the child and said, "This child's childhood name will be Young. Like the other children, let the nanny take care of him and send some members of the Shadow Sword team to be his guardians." He also said, in addition, let it participate in the selection process along with the 8th child. The butler asked again, "You mean right now?" He explained, but the youngest son was still not ready. Moreover, there were still several months between them. Taishan silently looked down at the little kid next to him and said, "It's okay." Reet was astonished to hear them talking. After finishing their discussion, the two of them left, leaving Reet in the room. Only when she was alone did Reet let out a breath. They had gone. It's just like father, even though it had been a long time since they last met, the feeling of pressure was still there. He tried to move his hand and thought, but what is happening here? It's too clear to be just a mere recollection. Reed remembered just now, and even the conversation earlier, that it was something that had truly happened. Reed forced a stiff smile and clenched his fists, thinking, I don't want to believe it, but if that's the case, then what? He is in pain, damn it, have I really gone back to the past? Time flew by, and a few months after returning to the past, a special day for the Sunmu clan arrived. That is the true selection. The children in the family will reveal their talents through the weapons that choose them. Reed remembered that his father had been chosen by countless swords and became the greatest swordsman of all time. The eldest brother was chosen by the sword, magic tome, and supreme magic, thereby becoming renowned for his extraordinary swordsmanship and magic. Reed, in her beautiful outfit, sighed, and this time the participant was none other than herself. How annoying. Lee Young's nanny, Ms. Moonkawa, smiled happily and said, oh my, the young master looks so fitting in his ceremonial attire, and despite being in this unfamiliar environment, he doesn't cry at all. He is truly mature. Moonkawa picked Reed up and said with a smile, everything will definitely get better. The young master's path will always be wide open. Reed also smiled. He recalled the events of his past life. To him, she was no different from his biological mother, but in the past, due to the jealousy of other siblings, she had been expelled from the family. He thought, perhaps the only person by his side until the end, crying for his future, would be this nanny. Reed raised his hand to rub Moonkawa's cheek, thinking, but this time things would not be the same anymore. He was determined. He would protect her at all costs. Another person appeared and said to them, Master Lee Young, everything is ready. Moonkawa smiled and said, shall we depart? At another place, the butler Choi reports the situation, the master. Everything for the selection ceremony is ready. Taishan turned his head and replied, all right, let's go. At this moment, a group of servants had arrived, led by two nannies holding two children, followed by Taishan and butler Choi. They quickly went in and out. Outside was an enormous arena, with a giant platform in the center and the cheers of the crowd. Two children appeared before everyone. A few people recognized them and said to each other, is that the child? The illegitimate child was brought back from outside. That is the matriarch of the Sunmu clan, Baek Hwayeon silently assessing as she looked down. Beside her was the steward of the Sunmu clan, Lee Tae Hong. There is also the eldest son Lee Myong Jung and the third young master Lee Gun Seong. A sound rang out, attracting the general manager's attention. It seemed so small. Lee Myong Jung smiled and said, no one has ever participated in the selection process at such a young age. The young man turned to look at his younger brother and said with a smile, right, Gun Seong? Gun Ji Seong clenched his hand tightly, silent. After a moment, he replied, yes, that's right. He mumbled, I really don't know where this thing came from, it's really curious. Below, the host Taishan shouted loudly, beginning the selection process. First, he said to the nanny next to him, Wa, step forward. The eighth child of the Sunmu clan, Liwa, was bewilderedly placed on a rock. Taishan also took something out of his pocket. He takes the child's hand, then quickly used a small knife to draw a little blood from the child. The child immediately cried out in pain, but the drop of blood that fell onto the rock began to glow. Immediately after, this force rushed forward. Everyone was astonished. Oh my god, could it be? The legendary sword of ancient fame, the saint-level artifact, the Thuong Na sword, is a legendary sword that has remained silent for many generations. Taishan quickly reached out to summon the sword back. The next second, the sword was neatly in his hand. Taishan smiled and said to the child in his arms, from now on, the Thuong Na sword belongs to Wa. Everyone joyfully said, congratulations, madam, another outstanding genius has been born into the family. Indeed, it is a happy day for the family. Baek Hwayeon smiled triumphantly and said, thank you. Then she silently listened to Taishan continue. Next it was Young's turn. Everyone also changed their attitude. Is that the child? The illegitimate child brought back from outside. Tisk tisk, why let someone like that participate in the selection process? Reed was quickly lifted onto the rock. He endured the pain from the cut on his hand without crying. Taishan placed his hand on his head and said, finally. Reed bowed her head and furrowed her brows, thinking, has this moment finally arrived? In the previous life, the sword chose me as the heavenly sword, a celestial grade sword. Reed looked at the blood drop falling down and thought, if so, what will happen in this life? The rock that just received a drop of blood has now lit up brilliantly. Everyone standing around murmured, is that the child, the outsider they brought in from the outside? Tisk tisk, how can an outsider participate in the selection process? General Manager Lee Tae Hong looked at his sister-in-law with full of concern. He thought, looking at his sister-in-law's expression, it seemed her mood wasn't very good. He sighed. After all, it is the bloodline that the eldest brother has kept hidden for so long, but well, it has to be that way. Without saying, Lee Tae-han also understood that the fate of that child was truly pitiful. Bearing the title of an outsider and wanting to survive in the Sunmu clan, it will be very difficult. Especially when, just because of those old conservative men clinging to this outdated pureblood ideology. Sure enough, the next moment an old man appeared and said with a smile, "It seems the general manager is quite interested in an outsider. That is the elder of the Sunmu clan, Lee Chul-young. Just looking at his face is annoying." Lee Tae-han lightly said, "Greetings, elder. You think that a person whose true thoughts no one can guess is indeed an opponent that cannot be underestimated." He looked down and said, "Is that the child, the one the family had brought back?" Lee Tae-han still replied, "That's right, I heard the child was discovered and protected by the Shadow Sword team." Lee Chul-young laughed and said, I really can't understand the thoughts of the family head. An outsider child, unclear of who and where they were born by, yet is allowed to participate in the selection process. Haven't the outsiders long proven that they are unqualified to participate in this ritual? The steward's experience is the clearest evidence of all." Hearing this, Lee Tae-han clenched his hand tightly and said, "What did you just say, sir?" This old man said maliciously, "Oh my, please forgive me, it's just that the steward originally came from outside and wasn't chosen by any weapon in the selection process back then, which has already become too well known." He concluded by saying, "An outsider's child is still an outsider's child." Lee Chul-young slammed a second down on the floor, then laughed and said, "It's best to know your place." Lee Tae-han is angry now. He shouted loudly at the man with the silver hair and equally silver brain, "Don't go too far, if you continue to insult." But before he could finish speaking, Lee Tae-han saw the old man staring in astonishment down below. Taeon quickly looked after, and he was equally surprised. Looking at the sword that was shining brightly, Lee Chul-young didn't understand, what the heck is happening? Lee Tae-han, on the contrary, was very amused but also astonished. How could this be? He smiled and muttered, "I witnessed it with my own eyes, yet it still feels like a dream." Beneath the arena, shimmering blue rays are radiating. The entire arena was like it had been fitted with 1001 disco lights. Blood Spirit Spear Sword, Iron Cage Blade Sword. Not only that, the Holy Sword Ma, along with the Holy Relic of Thunder Dragon Yinglong, are all shining. Witnesses were also horrified. It was impossible, utterly absurd. Not only were the ceremonial weapons reacting, but even the weapons that already had owners were responding as well. At this moment, a sword in another place also shines. Mong Jung was astonished. How could it be like that? He turned to his younger brother in astonishment and asked, "Gun Seong, can you believe it?" He said with great joy, "Our youngest sibling seems to be far more talented than we thought." Gun Seong looked down coldly and said, "That's exactly right." The remaining people bewilderedly looked at each other. Isn't there something wrong here? An outsider child couldn't possibly achieve such results, but the selection process inherently cannot have errors. At this moment, a loud sound echoed, "Silence." The atmosphere in the stands is just beginning to stabilize. Itation declares, in accordance with the family rules, that the weapons chosen in this ceremony will all belong to Young. However, this matter is not simple to handle like that, so we will listen to everyone's opinions, he concluded. At this moment, a hand raised and said, "I have a suggestion." It is Lee Tae-hong. Itation also agreed and said, "Yes, General Manager, do you have any opinions?" Lee Tae-hong laughed and said, "I think this matter is inappropriate. The selection ritual is an important tradition of the family. Therefore, let the youngest choose a sword for himself." Reek was still sitting on the rock, with the swords shining brightly behind him. Taishan heard that and immediately waved his hand, then replied, "Not bad. I will accept that proposal." The next moment, the glowing swords sequentially moved. Even Reed was lifted by his strength. Taishan said, "All right, son. Please choose what you want." You are placed on the ground, facing some swords that look very powerful. Reed still can't believe it. She doesn't understand why everything is different from the previous life, but anyway, this is still a good opportunity for her. He clenched his hand and thought, "So then, I will make full use of it, think and act." Reed immediately rushed forward. He walked past the sword associated with the legend of Prothwan Long. The holy spear pierces the white neck, forged from a part of the saint's body, used to vanquish the great monster but was also ignored. The swords were arranged in 2 long rows. Reed was still analyzing. The Brahine staff, created from a branch of the world tree, where the spirits rested. Moon Sun Star Spirit Sword, forged at the moment when the moon, the sun, and the stars align. In general, countless great weapons await their selection. Reed raised her hand to think, but there was no need to hesitate for long. In the distance, Itation was astonished. That sword. He realized that it was the sword that the founding ancestor of the Sunmu clan had found in the wilderness. For generations, no one had been able to unlock its hidden power. It was shrouded in mystery and only gathered more dust over the years. It is the Dark Knight. Reed has touched this sword. Taishan looked on and thought, based on the known abilities, it hasn't even reached the celestial level, but because it is related to the founding ancestor, it has always been preserved as a celestial level. Treasure. He closed his eyes. There had never been a predecessor chosen by the Black Knight as its master. Could this merely be the subconscious choice of a newborn child? As soon as he touched the sword, his entire body froze and then continued to float. He quickly returned to his father's arms. Reed saw Taishan's face, which was slightly unclear in expression, muttering, perhaps this is the arrangement of fate. The Black Knight sword appeared in his hand. Taishan shouted loudly. Young had chosen the Black Knight. The ceremony officially ended. Above, Baek Hwayeon muttered, the outsider, Lee Young, truly is a trouble that has just appeared. She calmly said, if it's an obstacle, then it can only be removed. Time flies like a dog running in the field. 9 years have passed already. A boy shouted loudly, Nanny, I'm going to practice in the afternoon. This boy is Lee Young, the 9th son of the Sunmu clan. He's already 9 years old. Nanny Moonkawa, upon hearing that, said, oh dear, let me see you off. From now on, we will call you Lee Young. Lee Young smiled helplessly and said, I can go on my own, but the nanny insisted, saying, even so, let me accompany you. She asked in confusion, young master, there are still many other empty training grounds, why do you insist on going to Area 1? Area 1 is too old already. Lee Young smiled and said, because someone is waiting for you there. Kawa didn't understand, someone is waiting? At this moment, a loud sound attracted the attention of both. It's not like that. Moonkawa realized, oh, it seems someone is in Area 7. A little girl, panting, heard someone say, gripping the sword too tightly will hurt your hand, now make another vertical slash. The girl immediately received orders to change the strategy. That was Liwa, the 8th daughter of the Sunmu clan, the same age as Young. Young realized, it's the 8th young lady, right? Moonkawa immediately corrected, you must call her sister, young master. If anyone hears this, it will be very troublesome. Lee Young didn't bother to think about it. Just over 5 months, what kind of sisterhood is that? Liwa, while panting, listened to the person next to him speaking continuously, the sword must be swung as if it were a part of your body, try again. You must control the sword with great finesse to avoid getting hurt, one more time. This time the girl was really angry. Liwa shouted, really, and then threw her sword far away. Lee Hwaa angrily scolded, why is the master so talkative? The young girl raised her voice and said, it doesn't matter how you hold the sword, as long as you hold it. The master, feeling embarrassed, replied, oh, my lady. I'm only doing this for your own good. The person picked up the sword and said with a smile, calm down a bit and try again, this time you will do better. Lee Young, pointing from afar, asked the nanny who was struggling to teach, who is that? Moonkawa replied, oh, that is Baek Hwayeon, the leader of the Black Squad. Lee Young watched them and mumbled, the leader, huh. He remarked, a 9-year-old child having such a master is truly excessive. Moonkawa, hearing that, also sorrowfully looked at her young master. She immediately comforted him, saying that a worthy master would eventually recognize his true value. Moonkawa tearfully said, it's because of my incompetence that I couldn't take better care of the young master. Miss Hwa has been given medicinal food containing spiritual herbs since childhood. Lee Young was speechless, truly, here we go again, the nanny is someone I am deeply grateful to. He turned his head and said, people like that, you don't need them. They're only here because of the Sunmu clan's background. He smiled and said to her, moreover, I already have very good teachers. The space changed to the training area dedicated to the direct line of Sunmu, Area 1. This place symbolizes the rich history of the Sunmu clan, Lee Young thought as he entered, now it's more symbolic than an actual training ground. He thought, but there is only one reason we came here. Lee Young walked up to stand in front of a small door. Quickly opened it, for this place stored weapons older than any armory. Inside the newly opened room were countless different types of swords and weapons. Lee Young looked at an old sword in the room, oh, found it. He picked it up and said with a smile, let's try using this today. Lee Young stepped into the middle of the training room and thought, after regressing to the second life 9 years ago, I have undergone a great change. Among them, the most astonishing thing was that Lee Young took a stance and exhaled a breath. He closed his eyes and focused his energy. At that moment, a dark power emanated from the sword. The next moment, he opened his eyes wide. At this moment, Lee Young began to explain, I have the ability to read the memories contained within weapons. Indeed, the next second, he seemed to appear in a different dimension and time. The sounds of lectures echoed, reinforcing a solid foundation. Whether it's advanced swordsmanship or basic swordsmanship, the foundation remains the core, with a downward slash. Li Yang also swung the sword just like the other swordsmen practicing, thinking that this sword held hidden memories. After a period of experimentation, he realized that the more the weapon was from the early generation and high grade, or the more the item was loved by its owner, the clearer the memories of the past became. Li Yang diligently followed the others along with the teachings of the one above, slashing from left to right, establishing a solid foundation for your sword. Like a sturdy pillar that never wavers. 7-star sword, first form, stone peak. Li Yang struck a powerful blow to the ground. The space seemed to be enveloped in a haze of dust. Li Yang smiled joyfully. So I've finally mastered the 7-star sword, he thought. Over the past 2 years, I've managed to read the memories of most of the weapons in Sunmu school. At this moment, a sound rang out, startling Li Yang. Turn around, excellent, it's been a long time since I've seen anyone wield the 7-star sword so perfectly. Li Tae Hong smiled as he walked into the room. Li Yang was astonished. Uncle, why? You know, this person is a 4th-level martial artist, the chief manager of the Sunmu clan, Li Tae Hong. Although he is the second son, his talent is recognized. And he currently holds the position of chief manager. From my previous life to this one, he is one of the few people who genuinely care about me. He immediately bowed his head solemnly and said, I greet you, uncle. Tae Hong also smiled and patted his head, saying, ha ha, just call me uncle. Taeyong smiled and continued, you never miss a practice, it's really commendable. I saw you at the training ground every day when I went to work and got off. He also said that being discriminated against compared to other brothers might be very difficult for you. He comforted, but hoped his child could resiliently overcome. Li Yang immediately replied to him, I'm fine, uncle. After all, I carry the blood of the Sunmu clan. You reiterated, proving yourself with the sword, that is the meaning that our family's name carries. You smiled brightly and said positively, so I will prove my strength myself. Li Tae Hong was startled upon hearing that. He sighed and thought, it's a pity that a child like you has the status of a second son. He changed the subject and said, hey, you're almost old enough for the naming ceremony, right? It's a bit late but. He laughed, pointed at me, and said, before we proceed with the naming ceremony, I want to be your mentor. How about that, are you happy? Li Yang immediately said, I am very grateful, but I cannot accept. Li Tae Hong was shocked upon hearing this. What? He immediately said loudly, why? Is it because I became your master that you're dissatisfied? Li Yang quickly explained, it's not like that, sir. According to the rules, one cannot become an apprentice before the naming ceremony. I just don't want to put you in a difficult position. Li Tae Hong said the opposite, but the other brothers are still blatantly breaking the family rules. Each of them has been allowed to use spiritual medicine and invite skilled masters to teach them. Li Yang placed his hand on his and said, but it's not because no one else follows the rules that we should do the same. He smiled and said, moreover, as you mentioned, you want to prove your own abilities. Li Tae Hong stared blankly, thinking, is this child really only 9 years old? These eyes look just like the big brothers. Li Tae Hong sighed and said, it seems you have no intention of changing your decision, huh? He patted your head and laughed, saying, this stubbornness is just like your father's. He muttered again, it's so troublesome. Uncle can't do anything to help you, can he? If I can't do anything for you, I just feel so guilty inside. He smiled and said, if you need anything, just let me know. Li Yang, upon hearing this, was immediately delighted and thought, thank you, uncle. That is exactly what I have been hoping for. He patted her head and said, actually, I have a request. Li Tae Hong smiled and said, oh, really? Let me hear it. Li Yang smiled and said, I want to visit the underground vault of the secret archive. Li Tae Hong was stunned after hearing this wish. Switch to a high-end building under strict guard. Seeing a car approaching, a guard immediately stopped it and said, stop. To enter here, the guard reminded Li Tae Hong in the car, excuse me, please confirm your identity and purpose of visit. Li Tae Hong presented his card and replied, General Manager Li Tae Hong, routine inspection. He pointed behind and said, the person accompanying is the youngest child of the Sunmu clan, Li Young, who is here for sightseeing purposes. The guard quickly stepped back, clear, confirmed, please proceed. Their car easily passed through and drove inside. Li Young thought to himself, this is the time to react like a child. He excitedly said, wow, is that really the secret scroll? Li Tae Hong asked the boy, are you that happy? Li Young laughed and said, of course, the secret chamber is where the greatest treasures of the family are kept. He thought to himself, and what we are looking for is also in there. Legendary weapons, ancient relics that people don't even know if they truly exist or not. For those who seek such delusions, there's often a saying that goes like this. Everything can be found in the archives of the Sunmu clan. Lee Tae Hong smiled as he led the excited Lee Young inside. He pressed the elevator button and explained that the basement of the secret vault is where weapons that have been sealed for various reasons are kept. Lee Young immediately spoke for him. Among them, there are even monstrous weapons that can devour their owners, right? Lee Tae Hong smiled and said, "That's right. It seems you know quite a lot." He warned that if you carelessly take them, both your body and mind will be consumed by them immediately. Both laughed together. "So, are you scared?" "No, not at all, absolutely not." The elevator opened. Lee Tae Hong smiled and said, "Don't worry, after all, dangerous places like that are not places we can enter." He instructed, "I have something to do upstairs, so take your time looking around." Lee Young stepped into the elevator and replied, "Yes, sir." Both quickly greeted each other before the elevator closed. When he was alone, Lee Young no longer bothered to hide his expression and muttered that playing the role of an innocent child wasn't easy at all. The basement of the secret vault, also known as the graveyard of weapons. The B floor quickly opened, a place sealing countless weapons and relics. Lee Young thought, the reason I came all the way here was to find a special weapon. Inside the room are countless weapons. But what he truly needs is the endless sword, which is originally a short sword, but when infused with magic power, can change the length, shape, weight, and properties according to one's will. Lee Young recalled that, in his previous life, Lee Gun Seong had discovered infinity in this secret archive, and thanks to its overwhelming transformation, he had earned the title of Master of Myriad Transformations. Lee Young thought, it was also thanks to that very title that my most promising successor, my eldest brother, was surpassed by a third party like him and became the head of the family. He furrowed his brow, pondering further. After that, he went on to track down and deal with me as well, a person in hiding. That's all I know. Lee Young thought, and to prevent the tragedy from repeating like in the previous life, I have only one choice. Lee Young reached out his hand and muttered, no matter how much time it takes, I must check everything one by one. In his hand, a surge of dark power appeared. Lee Young is determined, this time I will definitely obtain the infinity before Lee Gun Seong. The dark power enveloped a sword. Lee Young concluded, this is not it. Lee Young, after a while, had to sigh. He had examined everything that looked like a short sword for an entire hour, but still couldn't find infinity anywhere. However, he still didn't give up and looked around. No, it must be here, because we haven't checked everything yet. Lee Young was paying attention to the display cabinet when suddenly a sword fell onto the table. The short sword weapon fell right in front of Lee Young, emitting a loud clang. Lee Young, astonished, bent down to pick it up. This sword was rusty. Was it always this heavy? As soon as Lee Young channeled his power into it, the sword suddenly moved. Lee Young was astonished to see the dark power enveloping the sword. Lee Young shouted, how could it be this bad? What is going on here? He has been enveloped by that dark power. Then the next moment, as that dark power gradually dissipated, Lee Young could finally see the situation around him clearly. He was bewildered. Where is this? Lee Young was slumped among a pile of dead bodies. Lee Young looked around and thought, could this be the memory hidden within this rusty short sword? However, it feels completely different from the weapons I've read about before. He thought, the sensation is so vivid, as if I am truly existing here. Then, the next moment, Lee Young was startled to look ahead. He immediately turned around warily. Immediately saw something up above, an overwhelming presence that even nature must tremble before. The primordial monster that emerged from the blue hole in ancient times had devoured countless civilizations. Before him, a gigantic monster appeared, the Annihilation Beast King. Lee Young stepped back and thought, dead, doomed. There is no way we can win this battle. I have to run. That's what he thought, but faced with the overwhelming power of the enormous thing in front of him, he collapsed onto the ground. But right behind him, a man with an indistinct face, covered in blood, appeared. Lee Young was astonished as he looked at the figure rushing forward and thought, since when had it been standing behind me? A powerful blow rang out. The young man wielded his sword and leapt straight towards the Beast King to annihilate it. In just one slash, this person was able to tear the enemy apart with their demon-slaying strike. The child eradicated the giant Beast King, which had been split in half by this person. A loud explosion resounded in the sky. The body of the monster fell to the ground right where Lee Young was sitting. He mumbled in disbelief, no, it can't be. Could he really defeat that monster with just one slash of the sword? Then he remembered the matter of war. That's right, who was that person just now? At that moment, the young man also turned his head, casting a deadly gaze as he asked, who are you? Lee Young was astonished. This person saw him, and he was too terrified to speak. This person switched to the other hand to hold the sword down and then continued to ask, "Why are you here?" Without waiting for Li Young to answer, he said, "This is mercy. I will send you off without causing you pain." The next second, Li Young was astonished to see the sword striking towards him. His final consciousness was, he could not die. But the very next second, Li Young returned to reality, in the secret archives room. Li Young couldn't believe it, trembling as he thought, what was that, the scene just now? The scene that weighed down the entire body still lingers within me, as if everything were real. In the middle of the thought, Li Young suddenly stared in shock at the short sword, which was shedding its rust from itself. He was astonished and quickly picked up the short sword. Li Young realized it, no doubt. He couldn't hesitate any longer and immediately used it to cut his hand and take a drop of blood. Li Young let the sword take his blood and thought, I will be the master of myriad transformations. The next moment, the sword, after receiving the blood, emitted a dazzling green light. Li Young still tightly held the change in his hand. The next moment, he flicked his hand, and the short sword had already changed its shape. Li Young continued the experiment and swung his sword, delivering a tremendously powerful strike. Li Young smiled, finally found it, the infinite sword. Returning to Li Young's familiar home, Training Zone Number 1. Inside, Li Young continuously slashed the straw puppet in front of him. He gasped and muttered, failed again? He remembered, it had been a week since we obtained the infinite sword. The endless sword that I acquired from the underground armory that day. I am currently keeping it in the form of a ring to avoid detection. Li Young looked at the ring and thought, what on earth happened that day? He recalled, the stance in which the man swung the sword was a demon-slaying strike. As if to remind me that I am still unworthy, the dark energy only reveals that technique along with its name to me. Li Young tried to recall. Setting aside the power, just the movements of that man exuded elegance. However, no matter how hard I tried to imitate, I still could not replicate it. Li Young then smiled, raised his sword, and thought, but, the next second, he was swinging his sword while thinking. However, I do not feel impatient. He remembers, in his previous life, he was just someone who was looked down upon, not even taught the basic martial arts techniques of the family, just one move. But this was the first time he had been exposed to such advanced martial arts techniques. Li Young was determined to think, I can do it. I remember very clearly how that person moved in my memory, clearer than anyone else. Then Li Young was startled, thinking, wait a minute, that man. He looked at his hand and thought, I am not an adult like him but just a 9-year-old child. Li Young realized that if he tried to completely mimic the movements of an adult, he naturally wouldn't be able to fully exert his strength. Li Young exhaled and tried once more, but this time, he had to accept this body, taking it slowly and naturally. Li Young slowly closed his eyes, then raised the sword, wielding it in a way that suited his own body. The next second, the sword that had just touched the ground emitted a powerful force that cracked both the earth and stone. Li Young looked at his finished product and happily said, good, it seems I've got the hang of it. Li Young was determined to think, now the matter of utilizing magic power is all that's left. Li Young thought, no matter how many times he tried to apply the methods from his memory, still feels like an important part is missing, unable to be fully recreated. Li Young sighed and reminded himself that, in the end, he could only continue experimenting. Alright, let's start over, Li Young muttered, unaware that someone was observing him from afar. He continued to swing his sword. That woman also decided to charge straight forward. Right at this moment, a hand appeared and grabbed Li Young's sword tightly. Before Li Young's astonished gaze, he called, little one. Where did you learn that technique? A woman with black hair and yellow eyes appeared right behind Li Young. Li Young didn't know this person. Who is it, with jet black hair and brown eyes? This person must be a main line of the Sunmu clan. He asked, who is it? The astonished woman said, you don't know me? She laughed and said, oh right, you might not know much because I rarely show my face. The person reached out and asked, so what's your name? Li Young didn't understand but still replied, I'm Young. The woman excitedly shook Young's hand and said, your name is really special. Oh right, I am Jong Wa, very nice to meet you. Li Young then realized, it was his aunt, Jong Wa. Butler Tae Han once said, that child, your aunt, was a bit different from everyone else, and your grandfather couldn't accept that. Li Young thought back, his uncle had told him that story the previous week. But more than that, Li Young was constantly bullied by this person until he fell to his knees. She even said, your body is a bit weak, isn't it? I don't think you're strong at all. But at this moment, Jong Wa approached and said to him, well, kid, where did you learn that technique? Li Young hurriedly asked, why are you asking that? The youngest aunt laughed and said, that's ancient martial arts, and this youngest aunt here is extremely fond of those ancient martial arts. Jong Wa took a book from her sleeve and said, That was also the era when ancient monsters rampaged, wasn't it? She took out the book, handed it to Young, and said, "That's why this is a gift for you." Li Young was astonished. A gift? Jong Wa immediately told him to try opening it and see. Li Young skimmed through the pages in amazement. The handwriting was so bad that it was a bit hard to read. But is this magic? Not only is there magic, but there are also notes on martial arts. Li Young analyzed, with a fairly high level, to the point where I couldn't understand anything at all. Perhaps the rumors about her are not accurate after all. Seeing Li Young stop at a page, Jong Wa immediately approached and said, "Ah, that one? These are ancient spells based on exposed magic power." She recounted that, in the past, magic only utilized the innate magical energy within the body without the need for a magic core, while modern magic relies on storing magical energy in the heart. But can ancient magic truly be considered obsolete? Li Young was astonished, thinking, that is a perspective I have never thought of before. Jong Wa laughed and said, perhaps the technique for controlling magical power back then was even more advanced than it is now. The woman pointed at the book and said, therefore, the youngest sister is also studying amplification and transformation magic, but there are too few notes about it. Li Young looked on in astonishment. It's the magic of infinity. Li Young handed the book to Aunt Oud and then hurriedly said, Aunt Oud, please wait for me a moment. Li Young picked up the sword, closed his eyes, and thought. The magic power from the demon core spread throughout his body, but instead of absorbing the magic power back into the core, he just used it with revealed magic. The way to harness the magic of the man in that memory that I cannot understand. Alright, it can be done. After finishing the preparations, Li Young immediately opened his eyes and slashed powerfully at the ground. This time, its force was several times stronger than before. Both Li Young and Jong Wa were astonished. Li Young happily thought, I succeeded. Right at that moment, Jong Wa hurriedly went over and asked him, what is that thing, is it the amplification technique? Li Young, despite not wanting to, still honestly admitted that it was indeed amplification. Jong Wa immediately asked, what? How did you do that? Li Young didn't know how to explain. I just did it. Jong Wa continued, what do you mean? How did you do it? Li Young shrugged and asked, why do I have to tell you? Jong Wa hurriedly shouted, it's only because of the notebook you gave me that I found out, Aunt. You've lived your whole life just for this. Aunt Oud continuously said, she had been searching for it for more than 10 years, even when she was kicked out of the house, she pleaded with you, if she could do anything for you. Could you show her? Li Young sighed and said, then promise me 3 things. Jong Wa was astonished. Promise? Li Young immediately responded, yes, the first thing is, you must not tell anyone anything about me without my permission. He also said, of course, neither the elder brother nor the father should know. Jong Wa didn't understand and asked, why is that? Li Young sighed and replied, because I don't like others talking about me without my consent. Jong Wa also said sadly, you understand, I feel the same way. Even though he didn't understand why Aunt Oud suddenly seemed unhappy, Li Young still continued, the second thing is that you must not lie, because we have to trust each other. I will also be honest with you about my abilities. Jong Wa, though feeling awkward, still spoke. Sure, what is the final thing? Li Young just told her, the last thing is, maybe only the 2 of them know. Time passed again, it has been a year now. Moon Kawa hurriedly ran outside and called, young master, young master. Li Young, who was 10 years old, was with Jong Wa and hurriedly asked, Nanny, what's the matter that made you run all the way to the training ground? Moon Kawa hurriedly took out a letter and said, here, look at this. Jong Wa doesn't know, what's that, but Li Young, who has lived again, certainly knows. Finally it's here. The paper is a summons for Young of the 9 Palaces on September 10th. Those participating in the naming ceremony must gather at the central martial field before 10 o'clock. Anyone bringing items outside the specified list will be severely punished. The representative of the family head, Li Mong-jung, is the convener for the naming ceremony. Li Young suddenly noticed, isn't the family representative Li Mong-jun? He thought to himself, is father not at home? I haven't heard anything about his departure. At that moment, for some unknown reason, Jong Wa suddenly went crazy and shouted loudly, a naming ceremony? Li Young didn't understand anything. Why did she suddenly get so agitated? Jong Wa held her head and said, everything has just started to go wrong, and now it's the most critical moment. If you attend the naming ceremony, you'll be stuck there. No, don't attend. Li Young looked at her and thought, after a year since the agreement with Auntie, from then until now we have been studying magic together. Modern magic focuses on Oma energy, while ancient magic relies on exposed energy. These 2 systems combined have created a completely new kind of magic, which is the lifelong dream she wants to fulfill. He thinks that divine, primal magic power is used to store and alter the attributes of magic power, while exposed magic power helps control and operate it. Thanks to it, his ability to apply magic far surpasses those of his peers. Li Young had a headache listening to his youngest aunt persuade him not to attend the naming ceremony. He said, "You know it's impossible, don't you?" Li Young comforted, "Don't worry, even if the time is reduced a little, you will still continue to practice magic and restore ancient magic." Jong Wa, upon hearing that, hurriedly said, "How can that be done?" "The training schedule for the naming ceremony will be very intense." Li Young confidently smiled and said, "I will do both at the same time." Transition to another location within the Sunmu clan. Li Young and Liwa are sitting inside a large test tube, with someone outside reminding them, today marks the beginning of training. First, endure the magic attack for 30 minutes. Li Young looked at the person in front of him and thought, it's different again. The leader of the Blood Tiger team, Liwa's coach, has now become Jang Wook. Right at this moment, magical attacks began to appear. Coach Jang Wook observed from the outside, thinking to himself, normally, Young would have been electrocuted and collapsed immediately since he has never undergone basic training. But he countered everything with his magical power. Right at that moment, Li Young directly opened his eyes and looked straight at him. Make Jang Wook startled. He realized it, that kid is testing, experimenting, and observing Miss Bat to assess his own abilities, while also pushing the trainers to teach at a higher level. A mere 10-year-old child dares to do that? Jang Wook forced a smile and thought, damn, call that the second child, no, with such abilities, calling it that is an insult to a martial artist. He clenched his fist and thought, I must self-reflect. This is no longer a simple training session to prepare for the naming ceremony, but an opportunity to impart knowledge to him with all my strength. After finishing, Li Young stretched and sighed, it's done. He muttered, this family is truly insane. To train their resistance to magic, they actually throw themselves into a magical device, don't they? Li Young rubbed his shoulder and thought, well, he remembered. Unexpectedly, the other side was the one to apologize first. From that moment, everyone's gaze toward me had changed. Li Young left this place mumbling, anyway, I'll take a break first. At that moment, an arm suddenly reached out, and Li Young instantly reacted quickly to dodge this attack from the person in front of him. Li Hwa's, the 8th young lady of the Sunmu clan, appeared and said, hey, you illegitimate child, come out for a moment. Li Young waved her away in confusion, what tricks are you playing? Li Wa immediately pointed and cursed, watch your mouth. I am the legitimate child, while you are just the secondary child. Moreover, I am 1 year older than you. Li Young sighed, it's really troublesome. He turned his head and said, I don't have time to argue with you. Li Wa immediately channeled energy into his hand and shouted loudly, hey, don't ignore me. Li Young thought to himself, you even dare to use magic power, huh? He was discouraged, intending to let it go, yet. The next second, Li Young easily dodged a blow from Li Wa. While she wasn't paying attention, he took the opportunity to grab her by the neck with one hand and lift her up. Li Young grabbed Li Wa's shirt and said, if you want to complain, go complain to your mother. Don't bother me, I'm busy too. Li Young quickly let her go. Li Wa shouted loudly at this moment, it's all your fault. Because you caused that scandal at the initiation ceremony, I keep being compared to you. Please know your place as a second child and, be quiet. She shouted, it's so unfair. I lose sleep and miss meals every day to train so hard, while you were just born with extraordinary talent. I didn't want that either, but my mother. At this moment, Li Wa suddenly remembered and covered her mouth tightly. Li Young replied to her, blaming others is really easy, isn't it? As you said, I'm the second child, but this status doesn't grant me such a luxury. Can't sleep? Then don't sleep anymore. Can't keep up even without snacking? In that case, skip the main meals too. Li Young left and didn't forget to say, if I make you angry, just use every means to defeat me, then make me apologize to you, because that is the style of the Sunmu clan. Li Wa clenched her hand tightly and shouted, you arrogant brat. Alright, at the naming ceremony, I will showcase outstanding achievements surpassing yours, forcing you to call me, sister, kneel down and beg, remember that. Li Young turned his head and smiled, saying, yeah, I'll wait and see. Switch to the training area designated for the direct line of Sector 7. A nursemaid standing nearby shouted loudly, Madam has arrived. The matriarch of the Sunmu clan, Baek Hwayeon, slowly entered. She instructed, leave, I have something to discuss with my daughter. She slowly walked in. Li Wa was still continuously training in the training area. At this moment, she spoke up, what are you doing? Li Wa immediately said, Hick, I'm practicing. Baek Hwayeon then replied, I already heard about it. Instead, you were overwhelmed by it, weren't you? She coldly said, I already told you, if you can't suppress it, then crush it. It's truly disappointing. If you're only training hard out of fear of punishment, then stop. Liwa remained silent before her mother's words. She spoke up, I know what you think about my training, but I do it because I want to, Baek Hwayeon said through gritted teeth. What? Liwa shouted, I will defeat that guy, but not because you ordered me to, but because I want to. I will decide for myself. Baek Hwayeon understood and asked, provoked by that nameless person? Liwa, upon hearing that, could only stammer, that thing. Baek Hwayeon lifted her daughter's face and reminded her, you are the legitimate daughter of the Sunmu clan. From the very start, you and she were never the same. Defeating her is only natural, yet you let yourself be provoked? She took out a bottle of medicine and said, this is Mi Mong, a type of stimulant. Baek Hwayeon gave it to her daughter and left, not forgetting to remind her, if you can't overcome it, then trample it. That is the way of the Sunmu clan. She quickly left the training area. In Lee Young's house on a certain morning, Nanny Moon Kawa exclaimed in astonishment, it's impossible. On the week 14 scoreboard, it was clear, I saved Lee Young, ranked overall, level 1. Lee Young smiled and said, so, Nanny, feeling less worried now? Moon Kawa proudly embraced him and said, I haven't been able to help you much, young master, yet you've done so well. Lee Young smiled and replied, Nanny, you've helped me a lot. Please don't say that. At this moment, a rumbling sound appeared, leaving both of them bewildered. Jong Wa also appeared, she even cheerfully said loudly, kiddo, go practice. Lee Young said with a stern face, you just finished practicing, and Jong Wa laughed, that's why you need to continue. Practicing magic techniques will help you feel less tired. Lee Young immediately said, I have never heard of that effect before. Jong Wa glanced away and said, really, it is true, probably. Lee Young sighed and said, alright, anyway, I have something I want to show you. Jong Wa was surprised, Then, in the next second, little sister was astonished, unable to believe her eyes. Could it be that he had already achieved the highest level? Lee Young smiled as if to confirm this speculation. The technique of controlling malforce must go through 3 stages, strengthening the body and reaching the realm of power. Then transform the properties of magical power, reaching the realm of Qigong. After that, demonstrate supernatural strength through magic power, reaching the realm of energy mastery. However, her magical power is different, even though it's at stage 1, she can do more things and unleash more abilities. Therefore, her magic system is divided into levels called Tin. Jong Wa checked and happily said, perfect, it's indeed a 1-star, aren't you surprised by using this magic circuit? I thought it would take at least another year. Lee Young trembled as he recounted, I realized this while studying the theory. Looking back, it truly is a kind of crazy training. If I fail to control the magic power, the balance between the magic core and the magic circuit could completely collapse. He continued, but in reality, just letting everything happen naturally is enough. Magic is like water, it will flow according to its inherent laws. In the end, our bodies are merely vessels containing magic. Jong Wa was astonished by these words, the body is a vessel? She smiled determinedly and said, kid, I think I can do it too. It'll probably take some time, but I can do it. Lee Young sighed with a smile, looking at the youngest and thought, had she just grasped something? Jong Wa happily hugged Lee Young and said, thank you, my dear, you bring me luck. Lee Young struggled and said, ouch, you're breaking my ribs. Jong Wa didn't let Lee Young rest any longer and immediately said, great, now let's move on to the 2nd star. She continued, right from the start, you also knew that your first awakening was different from the usual first stage, didn't you? Lee Young nodded, I know. She asked again, so according to you, what is the thing you use best? Lee Young thought for a moment and replied, the thing I use best? I think it's the sword. At this moment, Jong Wa directly said, in my opinion, it is not so. Lee Young didn't understand, but she had never seen him practicing swordsmanship. The youngest aunt then said, he does, though. A few times when I had free time. She explained, what I mean is, you possess a talent that surpasses even swordsmanship. It's a bit hard to explain in words, isn't it? Jong Wa remarked, your greatest talent is magic power, and Lee Young was astonished, huh? He listened to Aunt Oud explain that her magical talent was overwhelmingly superior, to the point that it overshadowed everything else. I have tried to teach the magic techniques I created to many people, but no one could do it, Lee Young thought to himself. Before returning to the past, he had even been ridiculed for not being able to use magic. Jong Wa pointed at you and said, but for you now, reaching 2 stars is not difficult, and if you succeed with 2 stars. The naming ceremony was nothing more than child's play. Jong Wa smiled and affirmed with him. She laughed and continued, now we will teach you the real techniques, focus. Li Young also smiled and said, yes, I understand. He slowly stood up and then asked, by the way, miss, what is that thing next to you? Jong Wa smiled and looked at the box beside her, oh, this one? The next second, something flew through Li Young's cheek at an extremely high speed, leaving a scratch on his face as well. Jong Wa smiled and said, it's a steel ball. She held a few marbles in her hand and said, you must learn how to release magical energy while moving. If you only use it while standing still, that magic technique is no better than useless. Alright. Jong Wa gave an evil smile and said, let's get started. Li Young was also scared when he saw this side of his aunt. Time passes, the scene shifts back to the training area. Captain of the Blood Tiger Squad, Li Jungguan, said to both of them, I am the captain of the Blood Tiger Squad, Li Jungguan. From now on, I will guide you in the martial arts of the Sunmu clan. This person pointed and said, choose the weapons you will use and bring them here. Give you 1 minute, don't dawdle. Both immediately obeyed and ran forward. Liwa kept staring at Li Young, making him extremely frustrated. He spoke up first, really? What are you looking at? Want to say something, huh? Liwa immediately said, looking? Looking at what? There's nothing to say at all. Liwa whispered to him, you use a sword too, right? Li Young immediately replied, no. Liwa was astonished, huh? But earlier I saw you studying weapon techniques clearly. But Li Young didn't care about her and quickly took his weapon and left. Jungguan looked at him and said, what are you doing? Li Young replied, you told us to choose our weapons and bring them. Li Jungguan recalled, I told you to choose what you would use. Li Young still insisted, these are exactly the things I will use. Li Jungguan was silent and then muttered, I thought you weren't that stupid, but it turns out you're just a blockhead. He pulled the spear from his back and said, engrave in your heart the words I am about to say. I said I would teach you secret techniques, but they are neither moves nor postures. As he spoke, he swung his spear. In Sunmu Kaln, there are countless secret techniques known as Ngui. To master that secret technique, first, you must awaken the instincts that are still dormant in your veins. From now on, I will help you awaken that sense. Li Young and Li Wa silently listened to this person speak. Li Jungguan continued, don't worry too much about awakening your instincts. Li Wa didn't understand, what was he planning to do? Li Young reminded her, if she didn't want to faint right from the start, then get ready. The next second, Jungguan appeared in front of them. Li Young was also astonished by this speed. Immediately, Jungguan struck a blow towards Li Young. But he quickly dodged. Jungguan smiled and said, oh, can you handle that? Li Young braced himself, thinking, damn it, I can't believe I have to go through this crazy stuff again. In my past life, I couldn't even complete this training course. But this lifetime is different. The next moment, Li Young wielded his sword and charged forward. Continuous blows were delivered, and Li Young naturally couldn't dodge every strike. Liwa took the opportunity to charge forward with her sword, but she was quickly struck down by Jungguan's swinging blade, leaving her battered. Li Young thought to himself, it has been a month since the training with Li Jungguan began. No matter what, a 10-year-old child should not have to undergo training that results in broken bones and internal injuries. He smiled and thought, this isn't training meant for kids, but he had no intention of complaining. I'm starting to get the hang of it, he said to himself. Over here, Liwa suddenly wakes up. She startled and stood up, did I faint again? Li Young also said, that's right, this is your 22nd time already. I've only had 16 times, Liwa muttered angrily. If only I had prepared better on the first day. Li Jungguan thought to himself from a distance, 8th young miss, this child has extraordinary resilience. I used quite a bit of strength, yet he has never been seriously injured. And that illegitimate son, from the very first day, there was a feeling that he was something valuable. At first, seeing him bring a whole pile of weapons, I thought he was some kind of fool, but his proficiency in using each type of weapon was quite decent, and his practical application even exceeded expectations, he recalled. Moreover, it's only been a month and we're already gradually seeing results, which is interesting. After finishing, Jungguan came over and said, let's start training again. Everyone, return to your positions. At this moment, Li Young was holding a spear while Li Wa was holding a sword, both were panting heavily. A sound rang out, hey, Li Wa, turn around. Huh? Calling me? Li Young wiped his face and said, I will signal, you try to block once. Li Wa doesn't understand, why'd I have to do that? Li Young immediately said, if you don't like it, fine, I just thought we could strike a blow at the uncle. Li Wa was so angry she felt like throwing up. But she also seriously asked, are you sure? Li Young nodded, certainly. After finishing, Liwa actively rushed over and didn't forget to say loudly, you owe me. Li Young also rushed forward, thinking that with his current strength, he had no chance of winning. Then we can only take advantage of our numbers. Both immediately rushed forward. Li Jungguan muttered, working together, not a bad choice. He dodged Li Young's spear strike and said, if the plan succeeds. Li Young just thought, right now, to the right, then counterattacked. Li Young immediately lifted his spear to counterattack. Jungguan smiled joyfully and shouted. He quickly grabbed the spear and charged towards Li Young. Both sides continuously slashed at each other. Li Young suddenly shouted loudly at that moment, this is the moment. After speaking, Li Young quickly stepped back, giving the stage to Liwa, who charged forward with a sword. He threw his spear away. Pick up the sword in hand and think, the strike may deliver damage in just one moment. The sword I won from Mu Jin. Right as Liwa was struck and thrown back, Li Young immediately rushed forward with his chukmei strike, his sword radiating immense power. Li Jungguan also witnessed this scene in astonishment. He quickly took his stance, not noticing that Li Young had already let go of the sword. Jungguan was startled and looked on, while Li Young confidently thought, this time, I got it. Li Young directly punched forward with his hand. He smiled and looked up, then was astonished, blocked it. His hand was firmly held by Jungguan's hand. The next moment, Li Young coughed up blood. His body was knocked backwards. Jungguan looked at Li Young and laughed, saying, so it's 37 days, huh? Congratulations on awakening your sixth sense. The next moment, Jungguan dodged Li Wa's attack and concluded that the lady was still far away. Finally, both of them were still beaten down. Li Jungguan smiled and said, let's end it here for today. Li Wa angrily shouted, you said you could hit with one strike. I trusted you, you brat. Jungguan paid no attention and looked at his own hand. His hand was bruised. Jungguan thought, in the end, even after activating the magic power, it only pierced through a little bit, even if it was just a small amount. I still broke the taboo of not using magic power. Abandoning a technique like that, combined with excellent combat instincts, will become the one who terrifies the pillars of the family, Jungguan thought with a smile. 47 days after Wa also awakened the sixth sense, the training process with Li Jungguan finally ended, leaving time for rest and review of what had been learned. And at that moment, the person who came to me was Li Young, who was astonished as he looked at the person in front of him and said, you are Young, right? Li Young's older brother, Li Mong Jung. Li Mong Jung, the eldest son of Li Tae Shin, whose pseudonym is Song Seong, is an unprecedented master, reaching the second standard in magic and the second principal level in martial arts. Everyone both admired and feared him, but to me, he was the only brother. Li Mong Jung smiled and said, I'm sorry for not being able to take care of you, even if it's just an excuse, but I've been a bit busy lately. Li Young immediately replied, it's okay, I'm fine. Mong Jung smiled and said, this must be the first time we've met, yet you immediately knew who I am, huh? Li Young smiled and said, of course, even though I am just an incomplete child, as a younger brother, how could I not recognize my older brother's face? Li Mong Jung, upon hearing that, expressed sorrow and said, incomplete? Don't ever say that again. Even though our mothers gave birth to us separately, you and I are still siblings. He thought, to himself, how could a child who hasn't even had a naming ceremony yet call themselves incomplete? Li Young hurriedly said, I'm sorry. Mong Jung sighed and replied, no need to apologize, you just need to understand. His older brother also said that next time, there was no need for such formal greetings, they were brothers, so why be so polite? Li Young smiled and said, yes. I understand. He thought to himself, big brother is still the same as when he was young. Li Mong Jung took something out of his bag and said, this is a meeting gift. When I enrolled at the Eiffel Magic University in France, I obtained this, but I think it will be more useful to you. Li Mong Jung introduces, this is a type of medicine called nectar. Li Young was astonished, nectar? A type of high-grade elixir that the magic tower can only produce 500 milliliters of every 10 years. You said, big brother gave me such a precious thing. I truly thank you, big brother. Li Mong Jung was inexplicably startled upon hearing it. He mumbled, you're a bit different, aren't you? Li Young didn't understand. Yes, what do you mean? Li Mong Jung smiled and said, the people I met before all saw me as a rival, so this feeling is both strange and joyful. Li Young heard that and said, big brother, there's a bit of misunderstanding, even I was surprised, huh? Li Young smiled and said, it's not that I don't see you as an opponent, but being born into this family, you are also my opponent. So don't just see me as a cute child, Li Young said with a smile. Who knows, one day I might become the biggest rival of big brother. Hopefully, there will be an interesting competition. Li Mong Jung smiled happily at these words. He patted Li Young's head and said, all right, I'll wait for that day, the day you become my strongest rival. Both smiled. Li Yun replied, yes, and thought, my eldest brother has always sincerely loved and protected me, this time I will definitely protect him. A few days after the second exam of the Sunmu house took place, the naming ceremony arrived. Liwa and Li Yun were on a boat going somewhere. An island where the color of the soil changes depending on the density of magic in the air has long been the place for holding the naming ceremony of Sunmu. The person accompanying the two spoke up, now I will guide you about the naming ceremony exam. The young lady and the young master will have to survive on Red Green Island for 3 weeks and prove themselves. The devices given to everyone at this time are specifically for location tracking, unless it's an emergency situation, they must be carried at all times. The final gate of the exam will open in 2 days after the end of the 3rd week. Both carried their backpacks as they arrived at that island. The guide left with a farewell, wishing you good luck. Liwa finally spoke up, I have something to ask. Li Yun responded without surprise, it seems you have made up your mind, right? Liwa didn't understand, what? Li Yun said, you've been trying to say something since training, haven't you? Liwa was startled and blushed, how did you know? Ki Young looked at her as if she were an idiot, how could she not know? He said, speak, I will listen. Liwa then turned off the device. Then turned to Li Young and said, you pour it all out and mix it together. Li Young quickly complied, finished pouring everything, then asked, what's going on? Liwa then took out a bottle of medicine and introduced it, this is poison, called, Mong. Li Young was stunned to look at it. Liwa held the bottle of poison and recounted that it only works on children under 15 years old, and if exposed to air for more than 5 minutes, it will evaporate on its own. Once absorbed into the body, it will cause the magic power veins to be blocked for an extended period of time. Li Young asked emotionlessly, who did you receive it from? Liwa held up the bottle and said, I don't intend to tell you. The next second, she directly threw the vial of poison to the ground. She said, see, now there's no evidence left. Liwa resolutely said, I will defeat you in a fair and square manner, without using this poison, so you must also give it your all in the competition. Li Young was astonished by what had just happened. Then he smiled and said, no need to say it, I had already planned to do that. Two people smiled at each other and said, good. Liwa carried the backpack ahead and said, have you put on the tracking device again? Don't risk going into the center of the island when you're not familiar with the terrain. It's very dangerous. Li Young sighed and replied, all right, I know. Are you worried about me or something? Liwa angrily shouted, worry? I'm only afraid that you'll die and disappear somewhere before you can even fight me. Just then, an earthquake occurred, startling both of them as they looked up. Both of them looked into the forest. Liwa silently said, then don't die, okay? I'm going ahead. Li Young watched her leave and muttered, she's gone. Even so, my goal is not the outskirts of Twin Island. He rubbed his hands and muttered, all right, let's hit the road. Head straight to the center of the Red Chain Island. Everything happening on Zichtan Island was clearly recorded on the screen. A voice echoed, indeed, the 8th child of Sunmu has already completed their first hunting mission. The number of monsters defeated by them was not small either, after all, this was probably their first real battle. Li Chul-yung stroked his beard and said, but that sense, it's not something that comes naturally. He asked, it is 47 days, right? Jong Wa, who was far away, said, this child was not like this before, I once thought it would take at least 2 months. Li Jongguan thought to himself, although talented, that's all there is to it, simply someone must have stimulated it. According to him, that person is the youngest son, Li Young. As the scene shifted here, Li Chul-yung frowned and asked, but what exactly is that kid doing? Jongguan speculated, it seems like he's looking for shelter. The murmurs echoed, like a little mouse running away, coward, HMPH, truly the lineage of Sunmu. A sound echoed, reminding, don't speak anymore. Li Mong Jung glanced at them and said, in a dangerous place like this, finding shelter first is wise, and there's nothing to criticize about it. The two people behind hurriedly said, that's right, it's probably because we look at the 8th girl too much, so our standards have gone up. Another voice also said, in Sunmu's house, it's usually a sin. Li Chul-yung stroked his beard and said with a smile, is that so? Other people immediately said, yes, upon careful thought, it is true. Someone with Sunmu lineage behaving like an ordinary person is quite ridiculous. Li Mong Jung clenched his hand tightly, frowned, and thought, lowering and mocking a child just because of their origin? Since when has our family become like this? He looked up and thought, or perhaps, we have always been like this. However, Li Mong Jung also didn't understand what exactly Li Young intended to do by heading toward the center of Zichtan Island. Next to him, Tae Hong was frantically biting his hand, thinking, damn, what the heck is this kid doing? Mong Jung thought to himself, I'm not the only one confused. Huh? What exactly are you planning to do, Li Young? At this moment on Red Chain Island, Li Young looked at the hole in front of him and said, "This is fine here." Then, Li Young lit the fire and burned several types of herbs. Then after that, he and the leaves blocked the entrance as well. Everyone looked at the assessment and said, the hiding skills are not bad, indeed. Then someone suddenly noticed, "Wait, hold on a second, what is that kid doing?" But Li Young decisively threw the tracker and camera to the ground. The next second, to the bewilderment of everyone watching, Li Young took a leaf and covered these two things. The next second, the screen turned completely black, and Li Young's image was no longer there. Jong Wa sat in a corner and had to smile at this development. Ha ha ha, truly unpredictable. The others were left speechless. Li Young muttered that it was unnecessary for others to see. He raised his hand to look at his ring and said with a smile, "Now I can use it endlessly." Li Young smiled, "Once you've entered Zichtan Island, you must harvest as much as possible." The ring reverted to the shape of the infinite sword. Li Young smiled, "Now, let's go." The next moment, Li Young displayed an indescribably disgusted expression looking at the thing in front of him. He sighed deeply. "It's probably done now, but it looks terrible. Anyone who sees it wouldn't think this is an infusion made from magical herbs." Li Young fiddled with the object and sighed, "In my previous life, I couldn't even afford cheap elixirs, so I had to tag along with herb gatherers and alchemists to look for mana herbs." Jong Wa also told him, "Zichtan Island is filled with magic energy in the air. Just take advantage of it to increase the amount of magic energy," Li Young muttered. And also said that, if you drink water brewed from magic herbs, it will definitely have a higher effect. Li Young held the bowl of brewed water in his hand with a gaze as if facing death. Phew, alright. At Zichtan Island, it was already evening. That horrifying bowl of medicine was thrown straight to the ground. Li Young's whole body turned pale as he sat down, thinking, indeed, it was a taste like it came from hell. But here, the solitary battle for 3 weeks had officially begun. Time continued to pass until the 18th day of the naming ceremony. At this moment in the office of Mong Jung, a sound rang out, "Sir, may I come in?" Mong Jung immediately responded, "Ah, come in." The person politely said, "I apologize for disturbing you while you were working." Mong Jung smiled and replied, "It's okay, but judging by your expression, you probably have bad news, right?" Jang Hyun, deputy leader of the sword squad under Mong Jung, reporting, "A large-scale wandering group seems to have entered northern Korea. At first, I thought they would disturb the reclaimed area of the dangerous zone, but they are heading south, 2 days away from a magical stone quarry of the clan." Mong Jung thought, "Wandering, those criminals roving around the region," he muttered, "those hyenas wouldn't dare to invade the family's territory without a reason." Jang Hyun also said, "On the surface, he might look like a wanderer, but it could just be a disguise. There's certainly some force behind him." Mong Jung tapped his finger on the table and said, "There is also news that the Nine Dragons camp has moved their troops to the northern border. The immense power of the Central Plains, Kulon Tri, they continuously provoke the Sunmu family by invading our undeveloped territories." Mong Jung thought to himself, "It seems that the information about his father's departure from the family has been leaked. This must be a great opportunity for hostile forces." He asked, "Has the intelligence department of the family been informed yet?" Jang Hyun reported that, "Thanks to your prior order to conduct surveillance, we were able to quickly grasp the intelligence of the family." Upon hearing this, Mong Jung stood up and said, "First, let's cooperate with the intelligence department to gather more information." He looked outside and said, "There must still be something. I hope this is just a mistaken intuition." At another location, deep in the forest at night, a mark appeared. This seal glows brightly. Then, the next second, the space seemed to split in two. A man slowly stepped out. He smiled and said, "2 nights are enough to kill a stepchild, aren't they?" The next morning on the peaceful island, however, it was not so peaceful when at that very moment, a foot of the monster appeared on the ground. It emitted extremely horrifying sounds, belonging to the dragon race, a level 7 monster, Draco. And Li Young is facing this monster. He looks extremely struggling. The monster Draco suddenly lifted its body high, its chest seeming to gather something. Then in the next moment, a large fire blast shot straight ahead. Its goal, of course, is aimed at Li Young. You immediately leaned to dodge this strike. Then quickly grabbed the sword and charged forward to counterattack. Li Young took advantage of the thick mist to charge forward with his sword. He shouted loudly, pointing the mighty sword straight ahead. "This is the move to slay demons." Li Young thrusts the endless sword straight into the head of the Draco monster. Finally, without saying a word, Draco coughed up blood and collapsed to the ground, fading away. Li Young wiped his face and muttered, "Phew, indeed it's a dragon. If I were still on the outskirts of the Zichtan Island area, I might have been knocked out right from the first strike. Li Young recalled, it wasn't until the 19th day that I reached the center of Zichtan Island, the dragon's domain, but staying here would only be a waste of time. He sighed and sheathed his sword back into its scabbard. Li Young looked around and thought, I came this far for another reason. At this moment, the ground continued to move. Li Young frowned and looked around, again, huh? He quickly knelt down to hide. Indeed, from a distance, another group of monsters appeared. They were level 8 monsters, lizardmen. Li Young recalled that there had been something unusual since yesterday. The lizard people were supposed to live on the outskirts, yet they appeared in the center. However, when I attacked, they only fled without resisting. Li Young pondered that the low-ranking lizard people, with their limited intelligence, must have been influenced by something. If that's true, Li Young immediately drew his sword and charged forward after thinking. The group of people saw Li Young. Again, just like last time, he grabbed the sword and ran away. Li Young smiled and said, indeed, just as expected. Next, Li Young easily decapitates the heads of these monsters. He looked at their corpses and thought, once might be a coincidence, but the second time is not. I must pursue them. In the afternoon, open another place, a sound echoes, Nam, Bin, Do, Tai, Kai, Tran. The person who appeared yesterday sat in a corner muttering, the Sunmu bloodline is truly bizarre. Such a child can single-handedly eliminate so many of them. Behind him, a lizard-like human appeared, but it doesn't matter. This person said, after all, it's just a child. The lizard man had knelt before him. The man, the monster tamer, Nishiyama Shogo laughed and said, just a naive person, easily trapped due to lack of experience. Shogo calmly smiled and said, perhaps we don't need to use what we've already prepared, do we? Li Young thought to himself while on the tree, it's so obvious that I have to doubt it, but it turns out this is indeed a trap. The ability to control monsters, a tamer? Li Young frowned and thought, how could an outsider get into Zichtan Island? Li Young thought of a spell, it's not impossible. What if there was a preset teleportation array inside Zichtan Island? Li Young smiled and thought, at that time, there must have been someone in the clan who had intervened. Report to the clan and wait for reinforcements, Li Young thought. He immediately yanked the camera out and decided, no, by the time reinforcements arrived, it would be too late. The information about the mastermind would no longer be in our hands. He put that thing in his pocket and thought, then there's only one way left. Invisibility technique. Within seconds, Li Young had become invisible. He jumped to the ground, thinking, I will eliminate the traces. Destroy them yourself. Thinking is doing, Li Young immediately took a stance and raised his sword, preparing to attack Shogo. Waiting for reinforcements from the family would be too late. The information about the mastermind would completely slip out of our grasp. With this thought, Li Young decided to strike first. His hands gripped the sword tightly, using the stealth technique to prepare to strike Shogo. But right at that moment, the thing that Shogo was stroking beside him suddenly opened its eyes. Just in the moment he was about to strike, it suddenly transformed into a bird, red eyes with its wings fluttering. Shogo also startled, turned around, and shouted loudly, since when did you get here? Li Young also furrowed his brow and thought, dead language, did he carry an artifact that detects danger? Shogo, following the warning from the bird earlier, luckily dodged Li Young's attack, and the two clashed with each other. Shogo looked at Li Young and muttered, the illegitimate child of the Sunmu clan is stronger than I thought. Li Young retorted, or maybe you're just too weak. Shogo angrily shouted, shut up, stopping him immediately. The lizard men, following the orders, rushed in at lightning speed. Shogo's sword gleamed in his hand as he prepared to use the 7-star sword, third form. Chan Ton, in just a moment, these lizard men were easily slashed beyond recognition. But then the next second, Li Young suddenly stopped. Your body cannot move, the chains have bound both you and the sword. Shogo triumphantly laughed out loud and said, ha ha, you fell into the trap. That formation is a superior magic array capable of sealing the martial artist's mana. Without mana, you're nothing more than a useless brat. He was extremely smug and said, with this immobilized body, prepare to face the most tragic end. Li Young watched him leave, muttering to the lizard people, seal the magic power, how? If so, just use the magic circuit, he said, as his entire body emitted a surge of green power. The next second, a loud explosion rang out, startling the group of lizard people, and countless tangled chains snapped apart. Li Young charged straight towards Shogo, quickly intercepting him. Make him unable to believe it. Li Young smiled and asked, are you planning to run away? Shogo, struck by the two Diao Chan moves, stiffened and asked, how can the formation be broken? Li Young instructed, there's no reason to tell you that. Your image has been sent back to the main family through communication devices. Surrender now. Shogo suddenly laughed and said, it's no big deal, I will kill you and gain my freedom. Before these words, Li Young was a bit confused. What? What do you mean? Where he couldn't see, something tall rushed out, and Li Young was hit in the face by it. Li Young slammed the person against a tree, so hard that they coughed up blood. You struggle to look up, don't say that. Indeed, a gigantic monster appeared, the one who controls this land, the mountain demon. Li Young slowly sat up and thought, a level 3 monster, classified as a nightmare type, how could an ordinary tamer like him control the mountain demon hand? Shogo looked at Li Young with a smug smile and said, quite perceptive. Although the taming process is still incomplete, the command to kill you will certainly be executed flawlessly. He smugly searched inside his sleeve while saying, stop struggling. Accept your fate and obediently die. The next moment, the golden talismans were thrown upward by his arm. The talismans fell toward Li Young as if surrounding him. Li Young tried to think, stay calm, if he couldn't completely control the Devil's Hand Mountain, then just capturing the tamer would be enough. To create a loophole against this monster, there's only this way left. Li Young took out what he had prepared beforehand and thought, I didn't expect that I would have to use this thing one day. Li Young put it in his mouth and thought, a type of drug banned due to the excessive consequences compared to the amount of magical power received, Dak Fa Dan. After finishing the meal, Li Young frowned and collapsed, clearly feeling the thing flooding through his body. And one more thing, Li Young was trying to endure while thinking. The ring of endless pursuit shone brightly. In an instant, it turned into a sword, he thought, the secret technique she had instructed to use only when facing life-threatening danger. Li Young, after finishing all the preparations, finally raised his head and said, now is the time. Your entire body seems to transform, this is truly defying the heavens. Li Young dashed like lightning straight towards Kaitu's son. Li Young struck a blow and then stepped back to think, even though the skin was not scratched, it still had an effect. He continued to raise his sword, with this, I will bring it down. Under this immense power, even the mountain demon had to open its mouth wide, emitting ear-piercing sounds. Li Young recognized this sound, it was the roar of the mountain demon, Peer. Its body seemed to emit some kind of frequency, rendering Li Young unable to move. It was the magical field of this monster. Damn it! On Li Young's left chest, a black force is forming. A few seconds later, Li Young was astonished to see the transformation happening to the body, as the black aura repelled Peer. Right at that moment, recognizing the opportunity, he immediately continued to wield his sword and charge forward. Rush straight ahead. Li Young activated the eclipse. Slash the demon, strike straight towards the neck of the mountain demon hand. Immediately, it opened its mouth, unleashing a terrifying purple power. The sky was also affected by it, leaving it full of dark clouds. Li Young couldn't hold back and coughed up blood. Blood kept falling. He knelt down and thought, there's no more time to hesitate. The consequences of the explosive spells and the defiant technique will render me unable to move for long. Li Young tried to rush forward, only 10 seconds remained. Now, the demon hand of the mountain had attacked the wrong target. The tamer must be found immediately. Time keeps passing quickly. Li Young, who seemed about to collapse, suddenly felt as if the sun of truth shone brightly in his heart. On the ground, something like a red thread suddenly appeared, serving as a guiding path. The people still continued to protest. The end point of it is the person Li Young needs to find, Shogo. Shogo turned his head in astonishment, stammering, what, how could this be? Just 1 second left, Li Young pointed the sword directly at the guy and thought, not enough, just a little bit short, if only my body were a bit bigger. Li Young had no other choice but to shout out loud, if that's the case, then prolong it. In the next second, the endless sword changed shape and extended, conveniently helping Li Young successfully deliver a deep slash toward Shogo. After finishing, Li Young, tired and trembling, collapsed and thought, first, I have to keep my body steady, if I collapse now, it will really be the end. Li Young took a sip of the prepared medicine. She had warned that if the heaven-defying technique was used, this must be consumed. Fortunately, I brought the nectar. In the final moments, Li Young continued to think, before the monsters got closer, he had to completely subdue him. A while later, Li Young slowly regained consciousness in a strange place. He doesn't understand, everything around is white, where is this place, and what happened to the tamer and the demon of the mountain? The next moment, Li Young let out a cry of pain. I feel like my body is about to shatter. The next moment, a gigantic eye appeared, staring straight at Li Young. It spoke, so it has finally come to this, hasn't it? Those things are too dangerous for humans to absorb. How can both coexist in a single entity like this? I had hoped you wouldn't wake up anymore, if only now. The huge creature silently looked at Li Young lying on the ground and then said, feed it. Just after that, something fell right where he was lying. Li Young didn't understand what it was. In its light, Li Young faintly guessed it was a purple beehive. Could it be the Tu-Ha Thatch Ton? The big thing had just said, it's not you, but it needs to eat this. Next, the Great One gave heartfelt advice, the era has shifted, be strong, O child of humanity. In Li Yang's sight appeared the figure of a large turtle, very similar to the mountain demon. As it left, it did not forget to warn, don't let yourself be swallowed by the era. Transition scene, Liwa looks at the person below the blanket, oh, you're awake now, huh? Li Yang opened his eyes, bewildered as he looked at her. Wa, he said. Liwa angrily replied, you brat, how dare you call your sister by name? Because you are in pain. I will let it slide. How is your body feeling? Li Yang quickly examined his body and thought, although his musculoskeletal system was severely damaged, the amount of magical power had skyrocketed tremendously. Li Yang opened his eyes, still a bit dazed. At that moment, he had truly absorbed the celestial purple star stone. Li Yang then told Li Wa, some of the magic veins are blocked, the internal organs are slightly displaced, bones are cracked, and muscles are torn in a few places. But it's not too serious. Li Wa was horrified upon hearing this. What? All that and it's not serious? Li Yang looked at the girl next to him and thought, originally, the Crimson Jade Stone was what Li Wa intended to take, a terrifying elixir that enhances physical strength, boosts magical power, and grants immunity to poison and curses. It was indeed something he had decided to obtain at Crimson Island, but he did feel a bit guilty about it. Li Yang sat up and asked, wait, why are you here? At that moment, a sound echoed, capturing both of their attention, little brother. Li Yang was astonished upon hearing the sound, big brother, Mong Jung has already appeared here. He hurriedly said, are you okay? Let me heal your injuries with magic power first. I also brought some healing potions. Li Yang quickly replied, thank you. Brother, there's no need for magic healing, but I will accept the potion. Mong Jung felt a bit sad watching his younger brother take medicine. He said to his younger sister, Wa, sister, could you go out for a moment? Liwa didn't linger, yes, I understand. Mong Jung just told Young, if you die, I will wipe out every organization related to the Tamers from this world, no matter how powerful they are. Li Young laughed and said, ha ha, that sounds reassuring. Mong Jung seriously said, as a member of the Sunmu clan, what you have demonstrated is truly the exemplar of a martial artist, but as an elder brother, I cannot view it positively. It is a great recklessness. Li Yang also did not hesitate to reply, I didn't anticipate the appearance of Kaitu's son, I'm sorry, brother. If I had known it was there, I would have surely waited. Mong Jung sighed, it's good that you know how to distinguish between recklessness and confidence. Li Yang added at this point, big brother, since I dealt with the beast tamer, the information about him also belongs to me. Mong Jung sighed and patted the head, I knew you would say that. He added, that tamer was once a 5th-rank spell master of Japan's Yin-Yang Bureau. It seems he was expelled for attempting to master forbidden techniques. The mastermind behind it provided high-level talismans and magical tools, then activated them while the Demon Hand Mountain was dormant. They wanted to kill you and make it appear as if it was the act of a monster. Li Yang asked the main issue, brother, have you still not found the mastermind? He is in a near-death state, so it's difficult to extract information immediately. Li Yang suddenly thought of something and said, so you're not the main target, they're aiming at me. Mong Jung immediately asked, why do you think so? Li Yang analyzed, they want to damage your reputation by making people believe that you failed to detect the intruder and reacted too slowly. Mong Jung thought again and had to admit, it really is like that. It seems pretending not to know won't work anymore. Li Yang asked, are you okay, brother? Mong Jung patted his head and said, it's okay. The reputation might be slightly damaged, but it's not significant. He smiled and said, brother, I can't be absent for long, so I will return here. At this moment, Li Yang suddenly grabbed his hand, smiled, and said, big brother, do you want to trade with me? Li Yang said, say that you anticipated the beast tamer's intrusion and ordered me beforehand, I will testify in that direction. Li Yang thought, that way it will seem like you had prepared. For even what the family intelligence had not yet discovered, Mong Jung was stunned and asked, for you, it's best to testify truthfully, right? Li Yang simply replied, if everyone believes that you completed this on your own, they will surely be more wary and cautious of you. Mong Jung sighed and thought, so you call this a transaction, he said with a smile, yes, a transaction is when both parties exchange something that both need, what do you want? Li Yang immediately set the condition, granting the younger brother access to the library, 3 days would be enough. Mong Jung smiled, this arrogant guy, HMPH, alright, thank you. The two quickly shook hands. Li Yang added, no need to thank me, this is just a transaction after all. Li Mong Jung laughed and said, even if you don't agree, I would have found a way to handle this, right? Li Young didn't say clearly, that then. Li Mong Jung took out his phone and said, it seems the sword team is calling you, now you really have to go? Ah, that's right, before leaving, that big brother threw something to Li Young. Li Young caught it, it was his infinite sword. Li Mong Jung said, this matter, I will keep it a secret for you. Li Young smiled and said, indeed, you are still not easy to deal with at all. After a while, Liwa returned and asked, it seems the conversation went smoothly, right? Li Young simply replied, yes. Liwa leaned on her hand and asked him, so, which examiner will you challenge? It's been 3 weeks already, surely it's open by now. Li Young asked back, and what about you, where will you take the test? Liwa argued for a while and then laughed, saying, where will I be challenged? What else but the toughest challenge, the official's expectation, huh? She also asked, what about you? Li Young stood up and said, Kwanton Du. Liwa was taken aback, huh, does that place even exist? Don't tell me it's one of the examination officials on the outskirts. Li Young immediately said, yes, it's on the outskirts. Liwa was displeased upon hearing this. She said expressionlessly, truly disappointing, it seems I have misjudged you. You chose an official in the periphery? Then there is nothing more to say. I thought you were a rival. No, to be honest, I once thought you were better than me. Although everyone assumes that the position determines the difficulty of the exam, they probably think I chose the outer position because it's easier, Li Young thought to himself. He doesn't care about leaving, just let them think whatever they want. The sunlight gradually emerges on the edge of the forest. Li Young looked around, I don't remember exactly, but this must be the place. He recalled that before the regression, this was the cave he had accidentally discovered, and it was also the place where he would complete the second challenge of the naming ceremony. The Kwanton Duel. Li Young stood in front of this cave. He quickly caught the spark, then slowly moved inside. At first glance, it seemed like just a normal wall. But of course, it's not that simple. Li Young drew his sword. He immediately struck continuously towards this wall. Within seconds, the rocks crumbled, revealing a massive door behind them. Found it, Li Young smiled. At this moment, Li Young used the sword in his hand to draw a bit of blood. He clenched his hand tightly, letting the blood seep to a certain extent. Then quickly channeled spiritual energy into it and flung it forward. Blood and magic seeped into the door. The giant iron door also slowly opened. It seemed like it had been too long since anyone paid attention, so the smoke was incredibly dense, and it took a while before the inside became clear. Li Young slowly entered the examination hall with ancient architecture. He continued to place his blood into a bowl and said, the descendants of the Sunmu clan wish to be challenged by the ancestral test. Please allow it. As soon as the words were spoken, the surroundings seemed to be enveloped in dense waves of magical power. The challenge content of the combat trial has only one goal, to defeat yourself. A different Li Young, formed from magical power, appeared before him. Li Young thought, the number of attempts is unlimited, even if he gives up, he cannot leave before winning. Let's begin. The short sword in Li Young's hand once again becomes the endless sword. But right at that moment, Li Young hadn't had time to prepare anything when a force attacked him first, stabbing through his neck. Li Young still didn't understand what the hell was happening, when he saw his own blood spurting out. He fell before a clone of himself. A second later, Li Young sprang up. The first thing he did was scream in pain, clutching his neck tightly. Li Young was still trembling as he recalled, just now, his neck must have been severed. That's right, it was an illusion. In this challenging checkpoint, he couldn't die. Li Young slowly stood up and recalled, the realistic feeling was so maddening. At this level, an ordinary person would have surely gone insane. He looked towards his magical clone and thought, moreover, can I do that much? Li Young recalled, the illusion of the frontier battle allowed him to use his power perfectly. I think that at present, I still haven't fully utilized my inherent abilities. If I could completely harness them, I would have been able to block that attack earlier. Li Young picked up the sword again with determination. Alright, let's try one more time. However, reality slapped Li Young in the face. For the third time, he was stabbed through the abdomen and died. For the fifth time, though the sword was blocked, the neck was broken the very next second, still dead. Next, the 10th time, needless to say, still dead. The 13th, 18th, 20th, 23rd times, in short, still dead. This time, Li Young and his clone are still fighting fiercely. Li Young quickly stepped back to defend. He gasped, recalling, was it the 75th or 80th time? However, Li Young still gave a cold smile, thinking, now I understand a little, I can learn everything. The sword in his hand glowed, he thought, his greatest strength was freedom, an overwhelming transformation. The next moment, the infinite weapon in his hand transformed into a spear. It was an unpredictable combat style. This time, Li Young charged straight at his clone, who was also holding a spear. Li Young fought while thinking, then continued to clash swords gradually. The next moment, Li Young achieved his wish. His posture perfectly matched the posture of this clone. The clone quickly stepped back. He returned and used the sword to attack Li Young. This time, just like the previous times, the clone's sword successfully pierced straight into Li Young. But at this moment, Li Young said, "You fool. I intentionally revealed the flaw. You fool." Li Young smiled and raised his sword. The next second, he used the demon slaying strike, slicing the doppelganger made of magic in half. The figure before him was split in half. Suddenly smiled. Li Young watched it disappear and thought, if he could overcome the trials of the checkpoint, the bloodline of the Sunmu clan would unlock its hidden potential. In his previous life, his ability was merely the most common type, enhancement. Li Young looked at the power surrounding him and thought, what will it be in this life? Then the next second, he was astonished to see the golden magic enveloping him. This power was La. In front of the battle gate, many people were already waiting. Li Tae Hong sighed, crossing his arms and muttering, I thought he would be obedient this time, this annoying guy. People organize peaceful naming ceremonies, but he causes just as much trouble. At this moment, someone announced, shocking Tae Hong, the density of magic power is changing, it's opening. The next moment, the tightly closed door opened, and Li Young slowly stepped out. As soon as he went outside, he staggered as if he couldn't stand steadily. Li Tae Hong immediately ran over worriedly, Li Young. Are you okay? Wake up quickly. Li Young's dry lips spoke, uncle, water, so hungry. Li Tae Hong looked at his nephew, who had just come out and was already making demands, then fell asleep immediately, leaving him speechless. He trembled with anger and said, that kid again. Time and space drift away. At Li Young's house, a loud voice rang out, young master. Moon Kawa cried and worriedly hugged Li Young, saying, Hoo, do you know how worried I was? First, the Beast Master battle, then the Demon Hand Mountain, and even the ancient trials set by our ancestors. Li Young comforted her, nursemaid, you're too dirty now. You've been outdoors for almost a month. Moon Kawa cupped his face and said, at first, I intended to scold you harshly, but welcome home, young master. Li Young smiled and replied, yes, thank you. The nursemaid wiped her tears and said, I have prepared the bathwater. After you finish bathing, I will prepare a meal for you. Li Young then asked, nurse, what about my aunt? I thought she would be the first to come running. Moon Kawa froze, stammering, that. Li Young doesn't understand and turns back. Jong Wa was delighted to see you, my dear niece, nephew has arrived. The girl sitting behind the bars cheerfully said, I'm sorry, but seeing you're safe and sound is good enough. But what on earth did you do to cause your magic power to surge like that? You haven't even fully absorbed the energy in your body yet. Sit down quickly, and let's do this together. Li Young seriously looked at her and interrupted, Miss. Jong Wa comforted him, it's okay, she thought, I didn't expect you to go to this extent for me. The reason she was locked up here, After hearing the story, Li Young realized that she had caused a commotion in the control room with the elders and the boss. Back in the present, Jong Wa immediately said, I'm sorry, my dear, because I thought they did something strange to you, so I couldn't control myself and got angry. I just felt extremely furious, thinking about the possibility of not being able to see you again. Li Young silently looked at her. Jong Wa hurriedly clutched her throat and murmured, as if her throat had suddenly tightened on its own. Li Young thought to himself, to be honest, I had never completely trusted you before, but I don't know since when I have considered you as part of the family. Li Young sighed with a smile and thought, all right, now I accept that. Li Young turned to leave and said, I will soon get you out, please wait a little longer. Jong Wa hurriedly responded, How can you do that? It's okay, don't push yourself too hard. Li Young smiled and said, I won't do anything. Anyway, you'll be released soon. See you next time. Transition to an airport. The plane had just landed, and the servants and children of the Li family were already waiting. Taishan slowly stepped out of the plane door to the greetings of everyone. You have arrived, sir. Taishan instructed, sorry to keep you waiting. Baek Hwayeon simply said, it's okay. The hot spring has been prepared. Please take a comfortable bath and then enjoy your meal. Taishan simply replied and then quickly turned to look at his two youngest children. Li Young looked at his father and thought to himself, after the naming ceremony event this time, I thought I had grown up quite a bit, but how far is the distance between me and my father? I still cannot measure it. At this moment, Taishan had already faced Li Young. He quickly turned his head. Li Young just noticed, their eyes had already met. Taishan turned his head but spoke, I always say that those who do not know how to fight are unnecessary for the family, but, he turned back and said, among these, there is only one child who harbors the desire to defeat me. Li Young, upon hearing this, was startled. Everyone murmured, who is he talking to? Is it the big brother? Li Young smiled helplessly, thinking, I've tried to restrain my emotions to this extent, yet he can still read them. Switch the scene to the grand banquet hall of the Sunmu clan. Li Young stood in a corner contemplating, as this was a rare event at the Sunmu clan, so the scale of this party was much grander than other naming ceremonies. Li Young observed everything. The other person was the youngest Tower Master Mage ever known. The director of the Yin-Yang Institute. Well, no, now he's only the deputy director, right? At this moment, a sound rang out, excuse my rudeness, young master. Butler Choi appeared to inform him that the clan leader summoned him. Li Young asked again, is it father? Butler Choi simply replied, yes, please follow this way. Li Young walked while thinking, why did father call me alone? I hope it's not something serious. Outside, Taishan was already waiting. Li Young respectfully bowed and asked, Father, what did you call me for? When Li Young looked up, he realized that the big brother Mong Jung was also present. Li Young sensed a slight problem. No way. He remained silent and listened to his father speak. I believe you already know the reason I summoned you. He said, I want to hear about the event that happened during this naming ceremony. According to Mong Jung, you discovered the outsider and ordered his arrest. This incident was your plan, wasn't it? Li Young heard what he said and immediately froze. You are powerless, as I thought, Dad already knows. Li Young had no choice but to be honest. Yes, that's right, I was the one who proposed the deal with you, brother. The condition I put forth was that I would have the right to access the library for 3 days and help you avoid the backlash this time. Taishan heard this and said, considering your contributions to this matter, I will overlook the fact that you reported false information. He also reminded, but there won't be a next time. Li Young also bowed his head and replied, yes, I understand. Taishan, also did not forget to say, on the contrary, Mong Jung, you will have to receive a proper punishment later. Organizing this party is your responsibility. So get back to your work. Mong Jung immediately responded, yes, I will do that. Before leaving, Mong Jung did not forget to turn around and smile at his younger brother. Li Young was a bit worried about his brother, wondering if his elder brother was okay. Taishan continued, besides reporting false information, the credit this time belongs to you. You will receive the reward that Mong Jung promised. Finally, because you have discovered the challenge of battle, I will grant you a reward. Li Young was surprised to hear that, there is a reward right away. He did not hesitate to say, if that's the case, then no one knows what reward Mong Jung wants. In the banquet hall, Taishan gave a speech, thanking all the guests for making the effort to be here, hoping that our 2 children, the main characters of today's party, will be blessed on the road ahead. Now the naming ceremony will continue. Li Young and Liwa have already knelt and are waiting. Taishan started, Wa, move forward. He said, you have been chosen by the holy sword and always shine like the sunlight around you. Always stay steadfast on this brilliant path. I will give you the name Suhyun, which means eternally shining. A nameplate appeared right in front of her. Liwa, or from now on Li Suhyun, was extremely delighted with this name and immediately responded, thank you. Taishan turned and said, next. Young, move forward. Li Young moved forward while thinking. Their reaction was no different from the previous establishment of the selection consciousness, but it didn't matter. Taishan said loudly, I am strong and sharp, but at the same time flexible without breaking. Just like a blacksmith gathers iron from all directions to forge it into a single block, I have also forged myself. He looked up and said, I can't find a better word to describe you. Taishan immediately snapped his fingers. A nameplate appeared. He continued, so I will name you Chol. Li Young looked at this name and thought, I used to be given a name that meant to live strong like steel. But now, has that meaning changed? Until we reach the pinnacle of the Sunmu clan, I will not stop. Li Young clenched his hand and placed it on his chest. He smiled and said, thank you. From now on, my name is Li Chol. At this moment in the judicial isolation room of Sunmu Kwan, Jong Wa felt frustrated and held her head, yelling loudly. She angrily grabbed the bars and said, wanting to go outside, it's too stifling, too frustrating, even unable to witness the naming of the little one. The 2 tired guards listened as she kept talking non-stop, wondering why it was taking so long when she said she would release them. Right at that moment, the landline phone suddenly rang from outside. The guard, after finishing the phone call, opened the door and said to Jong Wa, you can go now. He also added that regarding discipline, there would be an announcement later. For now, permission to leave the quarantine area has been granted. Jong Wa was overjoyed. She immediately kicked the door open and ran outside. Ignoring the warnings from the guards outside, But she hadn't gone far when she stopped. Jong Wa joyfully called out, "Little one, Li Young." From now on, Li Chul, leaning against the wall, was already waiting for her. Jong Wa said in surprise, "Could it really be you who released me?" Li Chul simply replied, "Yes, exactly." Li Jong couldn't believe it. How could that be? However, Chul handed her a piece of paper. Jong Wa read it with her mouth agape. What is this?" Li Chul simply said, "You owe me a favor." Jong Wa carefully read the contents of the paper, appointing Jong Wa as elder and assigning him as the mentor of the ninth prince, Li Chul. After reading, she was so shocked that she couldn't believe it. Li Chul smiled brightly, extended his hand, and said, "I look forward to your guidance from now on, master." Li Young was getting dressed while talking to the nursemaid Moon Kawa. "Today is the start, right?" "Yes, from now on it's just the beginning," the nursemaid said emotionally. The young master is already 13 years old. Li Chul was now 13 years old, carrying his tools as he stepped out the door. He didn't forget to greet the nanny. "I'm heading out now." Li Chul looked at the school in front of him and murmured, "Good, the life of a freshman begins now." At this moment, the school is filled with gossip. "Hey, isn't that the illegitimate child?" "Yeah, it's the ninth child, Li Chul. I heard that the selection ceremony and the naming ceremony were also a mess. Surely it's just luck, after all, he's just the stepchild." Faced with those remarks, Li Chul simply stayed silent and listened to them speak. Achieving such results at the naming ceremony purely by luck would be quite difficult, right? It really does make me curious. Li Chul silently listened. Stepchild, stepchild, listening repeatedly gave him a headache. At this moment, someone exclaimed, "Oh, it's the eighth lady." They immediately changed their attitude and said, "Indeed, direct descendants of the family are different, their aura is distinct, and Li Suhyun is already 13 years old." Li Chul looked at her. "Her reaction is so different from mine, huh?" Li Suhyun suddenly said, "Aw, hello kid," her body slightly stiff. Li Chul didn't pay much attention and just replied, "Yeah, long time no see." Li Suhyun hesitantly said, You don't hold a grudge about what happened at the naming ceremony, do you?" Li Chul asked in confusion, "What happened at the naming ceremony?" Li Suhyun repeated in confusion, "No, it's the thing I said was disappointing." Li Chul thought, growing up made him no different than a cold-blooded person. He smiled and said, "All right, I don't mind at all." Li Suhyun immediately rejoiced, "Really? Truly?" Li Suhyun angrily said, "Lucky you. But aren't you a bit petty, huh?" Li Chul got angry and replied, "Do you want to explain exactly what part is petty, huh?" Li Suhyun asked again, "I heard you studied with the little lady and even went into the library." Before Li Chul could answer, a sound rang out, grabbing everyone's attention. A few adults standing above shouted, "The class division will now take place. New students who are called please gather in front of the instructor in an orderly manner." Everyone worriedly murmured, "What should we do? It's starting to get tense. If we're assigned to a bad class, it's over." Li Chul sighed and thought, that reaction was understandable. The academy's training period is 3 years, so class placement is very important. Each grade has 5 classes, and more outstanding students are placed in higher classes. For example, Li Suhyun is placed in this top class. Li Chul was not surprised because this was as expected. That person called again, "Next, young master Li Chul, Li Chul. Step forward to take the paper and don't forget to say, thank you." He took the paper and turned back. That obvious displeasure expression was really apparent. Reading the class placement content, Li Chul sighed and smiled helplessly, knowing it would be like this, but he didn't expect them to play such blatant tricks. 5th grade, also known as the dump, is where repeaters and rejects gather. Li Chul remembered that the class assignment for direct descendants was based on the naming ceremony evaluation, and the evaluation council was in the hands of the Elder Council and Lady Beck. Li Chul thought, they believed they had caused him a disadvantage, but on the contrary, this was actually beneficial for him, saving him effort. When the person in the yellow robe appeared, he said, "Young Master Li Chul, Class 5 goes this way." Li Chul immediately turned around and went with this person. "Understood, I'm going right away." Li Chul suddenly noticed that Li Suhyun was looking at him, so he turned his head back. Seeing Suhyun feeling indignant on his behalf, Li Chul thought to himself, "Wow, just look at that face. I can tell that if I don't do something, this kid will take matters into her own hands." Li Chul waved at her and thought, even though he felt completely fine. But now it's more important. Li Chul went along with a group of students who were struggling to talk to each other. "Damn it, is it 5th grade? Will we even be able to graduate? What should I tell my father? I can't get into 5th grade, the people at home will laugh to death." Li Chul thought to himself, how disappointing, how can a student of the Sunmu clan have such an attitude? At this moment, another boy came over and said, "Hey, aren't you the youngest son of the main family?" Lee Chul then replied, "Yes, that's right." This person smiled and introduced themselves. "Indeed, I have really wanted to greet you." This kid introduced himself. "I am Kim Han, the son of a small blacksmith shop contracting from the Sunmu clan. It's an honor to study with you, young master." Lee Chul thought, Kim Han? In the previous life, there was no memory of him at all, so he asked, "Why me?" Kim Han patted his head and said, "You are an outstanding figure, so I always see you as an idol." Lee Chul thought about it and realized it wasn't a lie. He smiled and said, "Kim Han, right?" He asked him, "What do you think about being placed in year 5? Kim Han smiled positively and said, "Well, I guess my strength is only at that level right now, but..." The boy firmly said, "Who knows what the future will be like?" Before this response, Lee Chul was also quite surprised. He smiled and said, "You, Dad, are making Kim Han not understand anything, huh, what?" At this moment, a few other trainees approached. Choi In-ha, 15 years old, as the representative, along with a group of other kids cheerfully said, "Nice to meet you. Rookie, we're counting on you." In the bewilderment of the new freshmen, they enthusiastically said, "Let's strive together." "That's right, if there's anything you don't know, feel free to ask." The person in charge clapped their hands to call everyone's attention, greeted everyone, and then everyone paid attention. 5th year instructor, 5th level warrior, Lee Young-ho smiled and introduced himself. "I am Lee Young-ho, the instructor in charge of the 5th year class. Today, since we have a new trainee joining, there will be no lessons, just a brief introduction." Lee Chul looked at this person and thought to himself, still full of enthusiasm and determination as before. In the previous life, he also used to tutor me privately because I couldn't keep up with him. Lee Young-ho smiled and continued, "All right, the introduction ends here. In-ha, you guide the rest for the new students." In-ha smiled and said, "Yes, sir." Choi In-ha smiled and continued, "Hello everyone, freshmen. Although it's a bit embarrassing, since I've been held back for 2 consecutive years, I'm still the class president of the 2nd year. Everyone must be tired from standing for so long. If anyone wants to sit, please feel free to do so. Now we will choose the class president." Lee Chul listened silently to this person speaking. Although they are students, there are times when they are put into real combat, so the class president is quite similar to the captain of a martial arts team. Unlike the instructor who is only responsible for training and teaching according to the plan, the class monitor can be considered the person in charge of everything else in the class. A student raised their hand and asked, "Oh, so how is the class president chosen?" Choi In-ha immediately replied, "Oh, I forgot to explain. I'm not sure how it is in other classes. But here we will have a light competition and then vote for the class president." Choi In-ha smiled and said, "All right, let's start the match now. Since this is a competition, no magic power is allowed. After each match, there will be a break." At this moment, Lee Chul interrupted the person in front of him, genuinely serious. Choi In-ha asked in confusion, "Young Master Lee Chul, is there something you are dissatisfied with?" He immediately replied, "Everything, including all the misunderstandings and everything you have said." He grabbed a sword from the rack and said, "Get a grip, this is Sunmu clan. If you want to play student games, don't come to this academy, go to a regular school in the safe zone." Choi In-ha frowned and said, "Your words are a bit too much. We just want to resolve this peacefully." Lee Chul slammed the sword into the ground and said, "Talking like this, you all probably won't understand, will you?" He coldly said, "Come up one by one, from now on I will fight all of you." A moment later, Lee Chul panted heavily, using his sword to support his body. But at least he was still the only one standing, while the other freshmen hurriedly pleaded, saying, "Please, please spare our lives." Choi In-ha outside was also amazed, thinking, couldn't believe it, how many people had he taken down by himself already? At this moment, Lee Chul spoke up, making Choi In-ha startled as well. He turned his head coldly and said, "Quickly call the next person in line." Choi In-ha thought to himself, pressure is truly frightening. He remained silent for a moment and then said, "This is the final match." Lee Chul raised the sword to his neck and said, "Is that so? Then come on, Choi In-ha." The next moment, the two swords collided with immense intensity. Choi In-ha fought while not understanding why he was going to such extremes. This match had no rewards or value, it was merely a practice match within the academy. Isn't even capable of making a serious move anymore. Lee Chul is still trying to stand firm in the ring. Choi In-ha looked at this scene and gritted his teeth, thinking, I was like that before, no matter what, I wanted to win. I once thought that compromise was another way of living. Once thought that accepting reality and growing up was the right thing to do. He is determined, but I want to win, I crave victory to the point of madness. The next moment, Lee Chul immediately spoke up, I won. He swung his sword forcefully, easily knocking the sword out of Choi In-ha's hand. He himself couldn't believe his eyes. Choi In-ha collapsed, clutching his hand and screaming in pain. Lee Chul sighed and said, "Take him to the infirmary." But at this moment, Choi In-ha shouted loudly, "It's not over yet. It's not over yet." In the next second, the boy continued to pick up his weapon and fight. Lee Chul still blocked this blow. Lee Chul assessed, left-handed swordplay, using the left hand because the right hand was injured. Moreover, the look in this kid's eyes now is completely different from earlier. Lee Chul shrugged once more in front of Choi In-ha's astonished gaze and said, "No, it's over." Lee Chul took the initiative to charge forward this time. Strike a blow to Choi In-ha's chest. The boy was in so much pain that he spat out saliva. At the end of the match, Choi In-ha collapsed while Lee Chul remained standing on the field. Lee Chul urged the others to quickly take Choi In-ha away. He slowly walked forward and said, "I have lived 1 second like an hour, 1 hour like a year. Who doesn't know that living comfortably is easier? But if we don't risk everything to fight every second, in the end, we will lose everything. Therefore, even when I stop breathing, I fight with myself, and fight with everything around me." He asked them again, "Have you ever lived like that? That's what you call a struggle." Lee Young-ho slowly approached Lee Chul, who was sitting, and said, "You've gone too far. 4 people have broken bones, and 3 have internal organ damage." Lee Chul reminded that if you want to survive in the Sunmu clan, at least you must know how to smile in the face of those wounds. Lee Young-ho wants to say that those kids all have their reasons. This time, Lee Chul spoke directly, "Instructor Lee Young-ho, even the trainees have understood it. Do I still need to explain it to the instructor?" Young-ho was stunned upon hearing that. Lee Chul left, not forgetting to praise, "People like you are rare in the Sunmu clan. You are a good person. However, they are students of the Sunmu clan, and if they go astray, even if he has to play the villain, he should pull them back." Lee Young-ho clenched his hands at Lee Chul's reminder, "Fulfill your duty." The next day, Lee Chul returned to the training ground, thinking, my whole body hurts. Yesterday, I overdid it a bit." But then he looked up and thought in astonishment, although some harbored hostility or felt uncomfortable, none of them avoided him or turned away. If they were still as frightened as they were yesterday, there would truly be no hope. But it didn't seem too bad. Lee Chul walked in, ignoring their words, "Here he comes, that piece of trash." Another person appeared and said, "Young master, you have arrived." Lee Chul smiled and said, "You came early, huh?" Kim Han replied with a smile, "Yes, I was afraid that I performed too poorly in front of you yesterday." Lee Chul simply said, "We're still just trainees, so being unskilled is only natural." Kim Han, upon hearing that, could only force a strained smile. A moment later, Kim Han, covered in injuries, smiled and approached Lee Chul, asking, "Hey, if you don't mind, can I ask you something?" Lee Chul smiled and said, "Sure, feel free to ask." Kim Han seriously said, "What must I do? What must I do to become as strong as you?" Lee Chul, upon hearing that, laughed and said, "Let me say this first, I'm still not skilled enough to teach anyone. But you have a very good eye, or perhaps quite a sharp intuition." Kim Han didn't quite understand and replied, "Huh?" Lee Chul analyzed for the young boy, "Yesterday, you managed to dodge my attacks 3 consecutive times. Utilize that ability. I think you're more suited to technique rather than strength. If you stake your life to hone what you have, one day you will be different." Kim Han immediately bowed his head and said, Thank you." At this moment, another person spoke up, "Hello, young master." Lee Chul turned around and sighed, "You look so miserable, in this state, you can't practice, can you?" Choi In-ha sighed and said, "If I decide to quit, will you leave me alone? You're probably going to say something about fighting and call me cowardly, aren't you?" The boy walked past Lee Chul and said, "I just didn't want to hear those words anymore, so I came out here." Lee Chul smiled as he watched Choi In-ha and thought, "Things have changed, haven't they?" A voice rang out, "Gather." Lee Young-ho said to them, 4 people are on sick leave, 5 people are absent without reason, leaving a total of 11 people remaining. He thought to himself, everyone looked exhausted. Moreover, the atmosphere has changed as well. Is it just because of a predator that the students from before are this tense? Lee Young-ho slowly said, "We were supposed to have a basic fitness test today, but given the current situation." Lee Young-ho suddenly remembered something, clenched his fist and said again, "I will change the plan. Right now, start the physical examination." A moment later, he announced that the physical fitness test had ended. From now on, the class president would be in charge of free training. The students were all exhausted at this point. Lee Chul stood there, sighed, and thought, "It took a full 10 hours to test my stamina? I'm a bit tired too." But could not stop. Lee Chul slowly stood up among the murmurs of everyone. "Hey, the instructor seems a bit unusual today, right? It's because of yesterday's match, many people got injured. If it were before, he would surely have given us a break. Lee Chul spoke up, attention. No need for introductions, I am Lee Chul, your class president. As Choi In-ha said yesterday, the class president has full authority to decide everything except orders from the instructor. All the freshmen and everyone else listened attentively. Lee Chul continued, my training time will be extremely rigorous. Those who can keep up, keep up. Those who can't, I have no intention of dragging along. At this moment, a young man, a fifth-year student, Kim Bo-sung swore, that annoying guy. Lee Chul put down the sword and said, if you're not satisfied with me, feel free to challenge. Just hit me once, and I'll give up the class president position. Finally, he said, all right, no more words needed, start right away, fight the person next to you. A moment later, Lee Chul assessed the surroundings, and finally, 6 people remained, the others had all given up halfway. Lee Chul said to them, stop, that's enough for today, let's break up, well done. That group of people kept muttering bad things, that damned bastard, it's because of him that I'm suffering like this. I really can't stand that bastard. What does this even mean? I have no intention of following that kind of thing. At this moment, a voice rang out, interrupting them, stop it. Kim Han clenched Bao's hand tightly and said, honestly, I feel very frustrated. Even though he is also very exhausted, we still couldn't hit him even once. They turned to ask, hey In-ha, what do you think? Last year we had a lot of fun, didn't we? Or do you also think? In-ha, panting, replied, we had so much fun that I ended up being held back a year. The group of students was stunned. What? In-ha stood up and said, if I don't change this time, I will truly live like a failure. Even if my legs and arms are broken, I still want to try once. Truly want to. You told them, you knew too, that youngest bastard, I mean, you understand what he wants to do, right? They immediately fell silent. Choi In-ha ignored the group and left, saying that he would try to fight, this time might actually be the last time, so be clear-headed, don't resist pointlessly or pretend not to know anymore. A moment later, in a certain room, a voice rang out, hey kid, transform your shape. Lee Chul, covered in wires, raised his hand with his magic power. After a moment, that voice said again, stop, this is far enough. Jong Wa held his head in frustration and said, failed again. Every time I try to create aura, its form collapses. She angrily said, not expecting this issue to rise after reaching 3 stars. Jong Wa muttered, if only there were records of how the ancients used magical power, it would be great. Lee Chul silently thought, if it is the memory of infinity, but I still haven't read the next memory. Anyway, the trip to the library has yielded unexpected results. That thing was shrouded in black mist, causing the hordes of monsters to tremble in fear, even the brave generals of the kingdom were defeated. Countless heroes sealed it at the northern 10,000. Demon Mountain, and the king granted land to honor that victory. The heroes, grateful for the king's grace, created a sword and named it the Endless Sword. Lee Chul thought that finding information about the infinite was a significant gain. Jong Wa happily said, anyway, you've reached the aura, stepping into 3 stars on your own is truly admirable. She smiled and said, the current stalemate will soon be resolved. In fact, the amplification technique and the transformation technique have almost been perfected by you. Lee Chul also said, yes, thank you for always teaching me. He asked again, by the way, I just remembered, miss, if we achieve 3 stars, what will we learn next? Jong Wa looked down at the paper and said, you will learn how to use chi and aura skills, but mastering them will take a lot of time. She asked again, by the way, how's the trainees' training going? You always look so tired. Lee Chul sighed and said, it's just, nothing special, really. Jong Wa smiled and said, really, if it's difficult, let me give you a hand. Lee Chul didn't understand, how do you plan to help? Jong Wa smugly said, you'll know soon enough, just trust me. The next day, Lee Chul was at a loss for words as he looked up, hearing that trusting was already worrying enough. Young Ho introduced to everyone, today, there will be a special lecture on magic. Everyone, adjust your attire and maintain your posture while waiting. He introduced, this is Elder Jong Wa, a researcher at Sunmu. Everyone clap, Jong Wa said enthusiastically, hee I'm so embarrassed. She smiled, picked up the chalk, and said, I don't like dragging things out, let's start the lesson right away. Lee Chul thought to himself downstairs, it seems she is becoming more and more fond of teaching. A moment later, Jong Wa clapped and said, all right, this dull lecture ends here. She said excitedly, from now on, it's the not boring part. I'll be passing on the improved version of the gland technique developed by our research institute. Lee Young-ho was bewildered. Didn't the lesson just end? Jong Wa smiled and said, what are you talking about? The main part starts now. Everyone, sit down properly. I'll only demonstrate once, so you need to focus. Jong Wa pulled Lee Chul, who was sitting below, up and lectured. When direct descendants enter the academy, they're often supported in this way. But you have nothing, so I tried a little harder. Lee Chul, upon hearing that, felt a bit moved and said, thank you. Jong Wa sat behind Lee Chul and continued, all right, very good. If the theory is correct, the strength will double, won't it? Lee Chul sighed and said, yes, ma'am, it's truly amazing. Immediately after, Lee Yun-ho said to everyone, attention everyone, from now on we will continue to practice fighting by directly applying the magic taught by the elder mage. Everyone, please find your opponent. At this moment, a young boy appeared and suggested, Master, be my opponent, okay? Choi In-ha held the sword with determination and said, I'll say this first, I won't go easy on you. Lee Chul smiled and took a stance, saying, it's an honor to fight you. I'll let you strike first. Immediately, the two swords clashed. Jong Wa thought from afar, wow, my little kid is really ruthless. She happily thought, looks just like me when I was young. At this moment, a sound echoed, drawing her attention. Honestly, I really can't stand that kid. They talk to each other, even if the second child is discriminated against, they are entirely different from us. Their physical constitution is different, and they even awakened special abilities. Right from the starting point, everything was already different. That's right, we have also tried our best, but what do they even understand? At this moment, Jong Wa came straight over and said, hey kids, making the two youngsters jump. Master, you haven't left yet? Jong Wa coldly said, just now, were you talking about the kid? No, about my disciple? Both of them were frightened by her expression and immediately lowered their heads, apologizing, we're sorry, we spoke too harshly. Jong Wa instructed, what do you think you know that you dare to say such things to that child, huh? Both of the kids became even more frightened and said, please forgive us. Another voice rang out, doesn't the young master know nothing either? Kim Bo-sung said, we have also made a lot of efforts, but every time we are treated as if we are nothing. Growing up in different circumstances, differences are only natural, right? Jong Wa turned around and said, do you really know nothing? Kim Bo-sung, bewildered, replied, huh? Jong Wa did not answer him but simply said, yes, perhaps not knowing would be better. If you knew how different a day in the life of that child was compared to yours, you would realize that your life is nothing but child's play. Kim Bo-sung clenched his hand and thought, after all, what is so different about that second son? He thought angrily, all right, fine, I will show you. In the afternoon, Lee Yun-ho announced that today's training session would end here. Kim Bo-sung frowned as he looked into the distance. He thought, see, there's no difference, just shouting about fighting, but in the end, it's only because he was gifted by nature to be different from us. A group of kids appeared and asked Kim Bo-sung, today, you said you wanted to follow the youngest son, right? But is it okay to move around the family's premises like this without permission? Kim Bo-sung responded, we are students, so it's fine, moreover, we are not going to a dangerous place. And that second son doesn't live in the main family's area anyway. He said, we can't let it overshadow us like this forever. Today, we'll witness it firsthand. Evening arrives at another place. The kids were so tired that they fell asleep. Kim Bo-sung thought to himself, how long had he been in the research area? It was already 9 o'clock in the evening. The kids said, Bo-sung, let's go back. The training during the day has made us too sleepy. I'm also exhausted. Alright, anyway, no one knows what that younger son is doing in there. Looking at those kids leaving, Kim Bo-sung muttered, the weak ones. But right at this moment, Kim Bo-sung let it go, it came out. Lee Chul stood outside, took a deep breath, and reminded himself, come on, you can do it. Kim Bo-sung thought to himself, finally, I can go home. Then he was astonished, going to the training ground? That area is exclusively for the main bloodline, he wasn't allowed in there. Right at that moment, loud noises rang out, startling all the kids. They looked at each other in confusion. What sound was that? Was it the sound of training? A boy spoke up, Bo-sung, it seems like that youngest master is truly formidable. Let's stop here. The master didn't say anything wrong, did he? We'll also try our best like Inha. However, Kim Bo-sung just said, I never skip personal training, there's no difference at all. His two friends just looked at each other with concern. Kim Bo-sung still insisted on thinking, what's the difference between me and that younger son? Finally, he watched as his two friends also went back. Kim Bo-sung still hid there, watching Lee Chul and thinking, I will definitely prove that I am not wrong. Kim Bo-sung still persistently follows the path that Lee Chul takes. The final point, Kim Bo-sung thought, finally home. Right at this moment, a light and a loud sound echoed, hey, someone, stop. This person looked at Kim Bosong and said, "What is this, a student?" He said, "Even though Lord Lee Chul walks around at this time every night, I didn't expect him to bring a student along." Kim Bosong was astonished to hear this, every night. He awkwardly explained, well, I have some business to attend to." The night guard then said, "According to the rules, this is not allowed. Go back immediately." Kim Bosong looked into the distance and said, "Yes." He noticed that the light was still on, and it was already 2 in the morning. Kim Bosong turned his head and said, "Then, may you proceed smoothly." Kim Bosong left, decided, "Let's go." The next morning, at 5 o'clock, at the training ground reserved for the 5th grade, Kim Bosong patted his head and thought, just as expected, "I came back too late today." Then he was stunned, looking ahead. Lee Chul was already sitting there, Kim Bosong thought in confusion. He looked truly exhausted, despite possessing the innate physical strength and abundant magical power of the main bloodline. Could a 13-year-old child endure a life of sleeping only 3 to 4 hours a day? Kim Bosong thought again, "What about me? When I get home, I usually watch TV or play games to relax. I also often practice individually, but still get enough sleep, rest, and relax reasonably." Lee Chul looked up and asked as someone approached, "What's the matter?" Kim Bosong spoke up, "Don't you feel tired?" Hearing this, Lee Chul immediately changed his expression. He said, "So it turns out you were among the people following me yesterday." Kim Bosong stiffened but still replied, "That's right, young master is a direct descendant, so he receives support. His starting point is also different, and moreover." Lee Chul was silent and then said, "I have lived like this since I was a child. Before I was born, the amount of sleep I had was a bit longer. Not getting enough sleep is, of course, very tiring." Kim Bosong didn't understand, "So why did you go to such lengths?" Lee Chul left, not forgetting to put his hand on that kid's shoulder and said, "You already know the answer." Kim Bosong silently nodded. He thought to himself, "Damn it." At another place, in the hall of the clan, Taishan is holding a sword and practicing here. Butler Choi appeared and reported, "Sir, the task you assigned has been completed." Taishan received it and said, "Let me see." He glanced over and said, "This is still not enough." Butler Choi explained, "This is a level 7 and 8 copy. With the current level of the students, it will be very dangerous." Taishan instructed, "Food and weapons can be stockpiled, but people cannot. Now we need to create individuals who can survive." Butler Choi replied, "Yes, I understand. I will handle it according to your orders." The butler continued, "In addition, there are some other matters that need to be reported." Taishan silently listened and then said, "The youngest did that, huh?" He let out a wistful smile. That kid, from an early age, had a distinctive gaze, the gaze of someone who had been deprived, who had been struck down to the very bottom. He said, "But leading people and changing them is a completely different matter." He ordered, "Adjust the content of the test a bit." Coincidentally, the 8th child is also in the same department. Let's raise the level of the entire student team. Butler Choi took the documents. "Yes, I understand." Taishan smiled and muttered, "Does that boy truly have the qualities to lead others or not? This time, I will examine it thoroughly." At the training ground reserved for the 5th grade, Lee Young-ho had just entered when he heard loud noises from the students. "Lost already, surrender, damn it, it's not over yet." He looked up in surprise. Lee Young-ho was astonished. "These kids, it's the weekend and they're already here so early. In that case, there's no need to call them together anymore." A student practicing swordsmanship saw him and quickly said, "Oh, coach, you're here." Young-ho responded, "Still diligent even on the weekend." He smiled and told the boy, "If there is anyone not here yet, go call them. There's an announcement to be made." The boy immediately obeyed. When all the students were assembled, Lee Young-ho spoke up. Although a bit rushed, the schedule for the first quarter evaluation had been moved up earlier. Therefore, the decision is to grant a 1-week leave first. Everyone, please treat this as the final day off and rest well. Lee Young-ho was about to say something when he suddenly noticed. Before their determined gazes, I suppose there's no need to remind them to maintain at least minimal training even during breaks, right? Finally, Young-ho just smiled and said, "I trust that you all know how to handle it. You've worked hard." "Done." The students immediately responded loudly, "Understood." Lee Chul thought to himself in a corner, "Suddenly getting a leave of absence like this and having the evaluations pushed up so soon, is it okay?" At this moment, he finally noticed and turned around to ask everyone, "You all haven't gone home yet, have you?" Kim Han smiled and said, "I'm looking at the young master." Choi and Ha also asked, "Young master, what do you plan to do during this vacation?" Lee Chul said, "Leave is personal time for everyone, why are you asking me?" He said, "Whenever you need a break, just take one. We have no intention of forcing anyone during the holiday." The students were astonished to hear that. They said to each other, "We didn't expect to hear these words from the young master. Actually, we thought the young master would make us dive into intense training. Like, is there really someone planning to rest, and then force everyone into a focused training session?" Lee Chul was speechless and said, "Why don't you just say it louder? What do you guys think I am?" He just said, "So during this vacation, should we try again like the first days?" The whole group was terrified after hearing that. Lee Chul smiled and said, "Whenever you need to rest, just take a break. Resting is important too. I know even if I tell you to rest, you won't just sit idly. So, take care of yourselves, rest well, and we'll see each other after the break." All the students cheered joyfully after hearing it. Transition to Lee Jong Wa's research room. Lee Jong Wa said expressionlessly, "I heard you were on leave, yet you still come here to bother this lady? I also have a ton of research to do, you know." Lee Chul sighed and revealed that he was clearly still messing around on his phone, looking at random things. Lee Jong Wa disagreed, saying, "What nonsense, I'm reading the news that Hanman has been recognized by the master of the house, and even his leukemia is cured." Lee Chul is always naive. "Wait, what exactly are you watching?" He asked again, "Is it true that the early promotion assessment was really due to my father's order?" Lee Jong Wa nodded and said, "That's right, the order was sent directly." Lee Chul contemplated, "Then this test will be harsher than I imagined. Right now, I'm blocked by the wall of magic power. If I want to get through, perhaps I'll have to seek the next memory of infinity." He scratched his head and tugged at his hair. If the memory cannot be read yet, it means something is still missing. We have tried to improve to see if we can unlock the next memory, but we have not succeeded. Lee Chul was trying to think if there was any other way, when he accidentally dropped the stack of papers beside him onto the ground. Lee Jong exclaimed, "Ah, what is that? Be careful. I told you to clean up this place properly already." Lee Chul picked up the fallen papers and suddenly noticed, what is this? In the research paper, it is noted that the decisive difference between ancient martial arts and modern martial arts lies in their intended goals. It can be inferred that, at that time, human techniques focused on fighting monsters. Lee Chul thought to himself, the goal-oriented approach, surely Chukma as well. Chukma in its original form is an excessively advanced technique. Lee Jong Wa saw him like that and asked, what's wrong, kid? Lee Chul hurriedly left the research room, only saying back, "Ma'am, I understand now. I'll explain later. I need to go to the training field right away." Lee Jong Wa was left with a pile of papers and yelled loudly, "That damned kid." A moment later, Lee Chul summoned endless swords into his hands. He stands in the middle of the training ground, seriously thinking, "Now let's try to imagine the opponent." Lee Chul closed his eyes and imagined a being larger than me, a creature unlike humans, a colossal beast, a technique that disregards efficiency, consecutive strikes, preservation of strength, evasion, or defense. Things that are flashy but lack destructive power or are merely meant to deceive opponents are useless. The clear objective of Chukma. After thinking, Lee Chul immediately gripped the sword tightly, and once he had gathered enough strength, he swiftly leapt forward. The next move, slaying monsters. Chukma, a powerful strike delivered. The next second, the entire training ground was enveloped in a hazy smoke. Around Lee Chul was also enveloped by a fading mist. He tightly gripped the sword enveloped in dark power in his hand and muttered, "All right. Now then, what will appear?" Lee Chul smiled, awaiting the darkness that was surrounding him. The next moment, as the darkness disappeared, Lee Chul appeared in another place. He thought to himself, "Where is this? The training ground, isn't it, just like when I first received the infinite sword? Why is it that only when I read the memories of the infinite can the perspective change?" While thinking, Lee Chul suddenly realized something. He hid behind a pillar of the house and looked out. That person, it was someone from his countless past memories. The speed was truly terrifying. Then he started and frowned, thinking, what is that? When the weapon changes, the aura changes accordingly. It's not that the person's aura is changing, but rather infinity is transforming the aura. The next moment, a voice rang out, causing Lee Chul to quickly hide again. Have they changed their approach once more? The other person didn't turn around, just said, "Don't spy on others while they're practicing." The other slowly approached and said, "Since you have it, have you named those techniques yet?" The person then replied, "Not yet, and actually, it hasn't reached the level to be called a technique." The other laughed loudly and said, "Then let me name it. How about 10,000 transformations? Not bad." Lee Chul quickly hid to listen to them talk. At that moment, the person holding the eternal sword suddenly paused and asked his fellow disciple, "Hey, did you perhaps bring someone here?" The other party replied, "Me? There's no such thing." Lee Chul was startled and froze upon hearing that. Then, the next moment, the sound of a sword rang out. However, it was those two who fought, and they even said they planned to have a match, so what reason is there to bring someone anywhere? Lee Chul stared in astonishment at the fencing match in front of him. He observed them, those eyes and that hair. This is the characteristic of the mainstream in Sunmu. At night at a certain location, the bus goes deep into the forest. Lee Chul sat in the car, looking outside and thinking, this scene is no different from the future or the past. The wall separates the safe area from the dangerous area. He remembered, in the past, a gigantic crack appeared near Tai Bin town, called Blue Hole, a mysterious space that humans had never officially discovered. And from that place, unseen monsters poured out, and humanity fought against the monsters for a long time to reclaim their territory. There are still unexplored lands. These places are called unexplored areas, also known as dangerous areas. A voice from outside rang out, recently, people have been saying that the walls have divided the boundary between the safe zone and the dangerous zone, right? Kim Han smiled and continued, the closer we get to the dangerous area, the more desolate the scenery becomes. Lee Chul told the young boy, but anyway, we are still inside the wall, so the level of destruction is limited to that. The pioneer villages near the dangerous area are very backward in terms of civilization. He remembered, in a previous life, he had also lived there for a while to hide. The bus entered a tunnel wall. Lee Chul reminded everyone should be alert. Because from now on, the place we step into, it is a dungeon that has not been fully explored yet. The bus went inside and stopped, and the students quickly got out. Lee Yun-ho stood there and ordered, assemble, we will establish a base here. Check the necessary supplies and then start the test. He stated that the guard's only duty is to protect this base. From now on, you must take care of everything yourselves. Next, Yun-ho slapped his chest and laughed, saying, but I'm not worried. I will support to the best of my ability, as the coach at this base, so everyone, show everything you have prepared up to now. All of the students immediately responded, yes. Lee Chul continued to stand up and said, from now on, I will take command. On his ear, he was wearing a headphone. Lee Chul continued, but before that, I'll be straightforward, the test this time is definitely harder because of me. This is the last chance, if anyone wants to leave, go right now. That's right, anyone looking at it can tell that this quarterly test is not meant for ordinary students. The forest of human-faced spiders, a dungeon filled with spider webs. Any intruder will be immediately detected by the monsters. Lee Chul recalled, so our mission is to film an adult spider in this forest? Clearly, this is the test that father has set up. At this moment, a voice rang out, startling Lee Chul, now no matter how you try, it will be useless. Choi In-ha sighed and said with a smile, all the members of Class 5 will not run away or give up. Kim Han also smiled and said, that's right, young master. Kim Bo-san also stood up and said, we believe in you. Lee Chul was also extremely astonished upon hearing that. Finally, he gave a seemingly helpless smile. Lee Chul muttered, you guys naturally say these cheesy lines, don't you? Kim Bo-sung blushed and explained, that's because the young master created such an atmosphere. Lee Chul smiled and said, all right, I understand. No one will give up. Check the communication one last time, review the supplies, and then let's head into the forest. The group immediately followed the order. The forest of spiders with human faces, they operate with behaviors similar to ants or bees, making them very difficult to deal with. Lee Chul led the group, saying, everyone must be aware, our task is to record the behavior of the spiders that have lived in this forest for at least 10 years using recording equipment. He even turned around and said, from now on, the commander is Choi In-ha. Choi In-ha was astonished, what do you mean? Lee Chul just told them, I will act alone, I will become bait for the spiders. The whole group heard that and was completely dumbfounded. When it was understood, there was astonishment. What is this? In this forest, spider webs are everywhere, along with giant spiders. A sword, with just one strike, easily dealt with a creature. Its blue blood splattered on Lee Chul's shirt. He gasped, looking into the distance and thinking, finally, everything has come together. Looking at the spiders around, he thought, it seems that the effort of killing a few to lure them with pheromones, though dangerous, is worth it. The human-faced spiders will bring back prey with high nutritional value to feed their larvae. The simplest way to make them see me is, haven't finished thinking yet, suddenly a spider rushed straight in from nowhere. Lee Chul figured it out, it was a nutritious prey, proven by the fact that this prey possessed a tremendous power. He quickly transformed the infinite into a spear and easily split the opponent in half with chukma. Lee Chul cautiously looked up. Indeed, around him were countless pairs of eyes from the human-faced spiders, along with their terrifying cries. The next moment, the spiders immediately rushed in groups, intending to ambush. Lee Chul, just as they were rushing towards him, only smiled. The space suddenly fell silent, and a few seconds later, Li Chul groggily opened his eyes. When everything became clear, he was astonished. This was inside the cocoon of the star-faced spider. Then everything is going according to plan. Li Chul assessed the situation. His stomach felt rather uncomfortable due to the poison, but his physical condition wasn't too bad. First, he decided to use the stealth technique to eliminate his aura. He quickly and silently summoned an infinite sword. A moment later, the spider silk threads were gradually trimmed. Li Chul knelt down, furrowing his brow and thought, if this is their nest, then the larva must be concentrated here. He did not hesitate and thrust the sword deeply into the inferior blade. The cocoon revealed a gap. He quickly peeked outside. When he saw clearly around him, Li Chul was astonished. How could there be so many food cocoons? It couldn't be just the amount they caught today. They should have eaten them all a long time ago. But why? The next moment, as if realizing or seeing something, Li Chul turned pale. What is that? In front of you, the human-faced spiders are surrounding something gigantic. At this moment, that thing suddenly moved and shook. Li Chul was startled, checking his own condition and thinking, is the dark energy resonating with it? Right at that moment, the horrifying cocoon suddenly split in two. From within the cocoon, sounds emerge. He spoke up, my children, are you hungry? That is the human-faced spider queen, a level 5 monster. Li Chul thought to himself inside the cocoon, a level 6 monster in the dungeon that can use human language? No, it hasn't opened its mouth yet. You speculate, then, could it be that the dark energy is reading the thoughts of this monster? The next second, one of the spider queen's legs pierced straight into a nearby cocoon, which was exactly where Li Chul was. He quickly got out, no longer having time to maintain the invisibility technique. At that moment, the queen spider stood in front of Li Chul and spoke, what are you? It muttered, the thing that awakens me is lying within you. Why do humans have that thing? That thing is. The next second, the spider queen with a human face spoke as if she were mad, Myalara, give it to him. Li Chul furrowed his brow, gripping his sword tightly, thinking about the terrifying pressure that only a high-level predator could create. But unfortunately, that kind of pressure doesn't work on me. He just frowned at it. The spider queen was astonished. You dare to resist my magic? You insolent thing. Then suddenly a strange noise appeared outside. The spider queen slowly turned her head to look out. Outside the forest, a loud explosion echoed. The spider queen with a human face incredulously said, Forest, my forest. What exactly have you done? Li Chul smiled and said, that is a weapon called the fierce magic bullet. Fortunately, this creepy forest has a lot of flammable things. It's simply a matter of detonating them according to my signal. At this moment, Kim Han and a few others shouted loudly, it has begun. Group 1 departs. They will reach the nest in no more than 30 minutes. Yoon Ho, in another place, also spoke loudly, that's the base camp, young master. We have discovered a level 5 magical energy source in the nest, it seems. Li Chul interrupted him and said, I'm fine, make sure to support the students first. The spider queen bit her lip in fury, how dare a human like you. She immediately ordered, children, hurry up, quickly protect my forest. The spiders immediately charged forward. After finishing, she turned to Li Chul and said, I will personally crush you. Arrogant brat, she said loudly, do you think you can defeat me on your own, or do you trust in those teammates rushing to the nest? Are you sure they can get here? You can't do anything to me. Li Chul replied to her, you are the one underestimating me. The spider queen was startled, what did you say? Li Chul closed his eyes. Then quickly radiating a yellow aura, he smiled and raised his sword. Over here, Choi and Ha also reported that all groups continued to fire explosive bullets to attract the human-faced spiders. Group 1 proceeds directly into the nest to support the young master and open a retreat path. Kim Bosan ran while shouting, wait, there's a variable in the team, can we just act like this? Choi and Ha simply said, that's the young master's order, let's just follow the plan. Then the boy thought to himself, young master, please try to hold on a little longer. Outside, the entire forest had been scorched, lighting up a part of the sky. The spider queen felt her lair shaking. She didn't understand why. Why haven't you died yet? Why are you still standing there? Li Chul just remained silent without responding. That crippled spider kept saying, those eyes, what exactly are you seeing? The hidden things, the invisible streams of power, the eyes that can see through those are called magic eyes, and Li Chul is using it. He held his nose to stop the bleeding and thought, thanks to the evil eye, I can read the flow of magic power and evade fatal attacks, but the difference in strength is too great to completely avoid them. Fortunately, this spider queen had just hatched, so it couldn't perfectly control its body yet. Li Chul quickly took out the medicine bottle to heal himself. He continued to hold the sword, ready to fight. There was only one chance. The next moment, he used the basic myriad transformation technique. The sword seemed to be buffed with dark energy. Qi Gong, Lei Ding. Li Chul wielded the eternal sword and charged straight at the Spider Queen with a human face. A powerful strike shook the heavens and earth, illuminating the sky with a dazzling magical force. In the thick smoke and dusty haze, spider blood splattered everywhere. But he was still twitching. Li Chul frowned, still too shallow. The child of the human-faced Spider Queen convulsed all over, mumbling, pain, 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 pain. Li Chul looked at it and thought, just as expected, cutting through that thick skin with just one strike is too difficult. The girl there kept saying, I will turn you into my subordinate, bring out the thing inside you, then recover myself, and afterwards, you will endure endless pain. Then the Spider Queen stretched out her hand, and a series of giant spider threads shot out. Li Chul frowned and stepped back, trying to dodge, but still let a thread fall on the person. Then, in a moment, Li Chul painfully held his head. The Spider Queen laughed triumphantly, ha ha, that arrogant face. But the next second, her mouth suddenly spurted blood. She didn't understand, clutching her arm and looking ahead. What is this? You, then she screamed in pain. Her entire body, blood is continuously gushing out from every opening. Li Chul still stood there firmly. He also advised her to be careful. Spiders and insects are inherently weak against fire. In an instant, the entire body of the human-faced Spider Queen was engulfed by a massive flame. Kim Han appeared and said, sorry, we were delayed because we had to clear the road. Li Chul was guided and supported by Kim Han. When I return, I will give you all special training. Kim Han cried, even in this situation, you still say that? He ordered the group, all right, quickly leave the nest now. Everyone immediately sprang into action. Elsewhere, the wardens were talking to each other. Team 5 of the first years is running late on their schedule. We've received reports that they returned 30 minutes ago. Surely, they haven't abandoned their mission like Team 4, have they? Well, it's understandable, after all, it's a special level 6 dungeon. And on top of that, a strange phenomenon occurred. Lee Young-ho quickly stepped in and said, sorry for being late, there were many injured people so we had to take them to the hospital first. He stepped forward, turned on the projector, and said, I will start reporting now. The screen lit up, and Young-ho spoke, the mission of Team 5 is to record the movements of the adult human-faced spider in the forest. However, while on the mission, we discovered anomalies and proceeded to gather information. First, Team 5 entered the dungeon, split into 4 groups, and placed 132 explosive magic bullets. Someone below hurriedly spoke up, wait, did I hear that wrong? Did you use firepower? Young-ho nodded, exactly, and we used 52 rounds when fighting the monster. Totaling 184. The person immediately shouted, are you planning to flatten the entire dungeon? Initially, the task was just to record the anomaly. Don't tell me you blew up the dungeon and called it a success. Young-ho remained silent and then said, the mission has been precisely completed. They immediately shouted, where's the footage? Show it now. Li Chul suddenly appeared at that moment, holding a camera, and said, sorry for being late, the recording device was broken and it took some time to restore it. Here is the video. He quickly went over to give the camera to Young-ho. Lee Soo-hyun whispered to him, are you crazy? Is it normal to set off bombs in a dungeon? Also, you didn't have to get captured alive. Li Chul just said that if you want to film, this is the surest way. A moment later, an unbelievable sound rang out. The warden who was just loud-mouthed now clutched his head. The report's content completely matched the footage. Using a bomb in the dungeon is no different from bringing a can of gasoline into a running house. Do you think this is a reasonable plan? Li Chul seriously analyzed. I only choose the option with the highest success rate for the mission. With a standard plan, can the trainees succeed? Seeing the opponent unable to say anything, Li Chul added, I would rather use every possible method to complete the mission than fail or give up. Sunmu Clan is a place that only values results. That's all. The warden silently thought to himself, isn't it a variable? It looks like a variable, but in reality, it's a plan. That second son absolutely trusted his plan. Some others said that the young master's plan was too groundbreaking to be used as an example and difficult to grade. Another person also said, however, since the mission was completed without any casualties, it can be said that it is a perfect score. In this evaluation test, Team 5 is the only team to achieve a perfect score. At this moment in the Sunmu family hall, a sound echoed, 32 people were killed, 78 were seriously injured, many were lightly injured, since the contract included a clause waiving personal rights, there is nothing particularly concerning. Itation spoke up, what about the measures to address the consequences for casualties in this evaluation test? The butler Choi reported, the treatment costs for those seriously injured will be fully covered, while those suffering severe after effects to the point of no recovery will. After a while of discussion, Taishan said, please continue to report on the progress, it's been tough. Butler Choi also said, yes, I understand. He continued, and here is the document about the dungeons that we received a report on this time. Taishan silently observed and then said, it indeed has an impact. The forest of Imyeonju was originally located in a dangerous area, and Butler Choi also said, yes, it is situated at the northernmost part of Gangwon province. On the screen appeared the image of the Spider Queen with a human face from earlier. Taishan just exclaimed, short, isn't it? Butler Choi explained that, according to the report, the recovered video footage only reached this point, but it seemed to have been edited. Taishan took a sip of tea and exclaimed, this child is truly interesting. He smiled and asked, what do you think? Butler Choi just smiled and said, it's amazing to have overcome a difficult task with intelligence. However, I'm concerned that he underestimates conventional tactics and strategy. Taishan was silent for a moment and then said, even you think so, huh? Butler Choi paused slightly, yes, sir. Taishan just said that unconventional and non-traditional are merely manifestations of its boldness, only when one masters the conventional style can they create miraculous moves. Not only the students but even the coaches do not oppose this plan, which is enough to prove the youngest one's leadership ability. The boss gathered the documents and continued, in fact, there was no information leaked, and the plan was a complete success. Not only in this evaluation period but also the number of times and the overall level of evaluation should be raised. Butler Choi nodded respectfully, yes, I will handle it that way. Taishan smiled and muttered, it seems that the other kids are starting to pay attention to the youngest. A few months later, at the training area designated for the 5th-year class of the military academy students, a hand was raised. Young master. Kim Han said, slightly crying, you know we just finished the final assessment yesterday, right? Lee Chul obviously replied, that's why I gave you all a break yesterday. Kim Han was completely speechless and said, forget it. He told everyone, even though this year's final evaluation has ended, don't forget, there's still the promotion exam waiting. I don't want anyone in our class to be held back, understand? The whole group immediately responded confidently, loudly, and clearly, understood, sir. Lee Chul smiled and said, Kim Han, I heard you were exhausted due to depleted mana in this evaluation exam, huh? You'll spend the whole day today memorizing the 10 basic rules. Kim Han felt like crying. Lee Chul directed everyone, then said, let's start the physical exercise now, and the whole group listened attentively. Lee Chul smiled and thought, they have become stronger, not only in body but also in spirit. They no longer crumble before their shortcomings but know how to compensate for them. It has been almost a year since they entered the military academy. Except for those who were eliminated right from the start, no one in our class has dropped out or died. Lee Yun-ho appeared and said, young master, are you here? Lee Chul turned around and replied, is there something wrong? Lee Yun-ho just said, I have some information to convey about the promotion exam. Lee Chul walked after him, all right, I'll go right away. At this moment, a sound echoed, drawing Lee Chul's attention, hey, over here. It's Lee Soo-hyun, the little girl waved to him. She said, sit down, I have something to tell you. Lee Soo-hyun smiled and said, you did well this evaluation period. Lee Chul also said, yeah, I heard that Class 1 is also very outstanding. Lee Soo-hyun said triumphantly, yes, that's right. Then she said, but wait, that is not the important thing. Lee Soo-hyun whispered to him, hey, from this promotion exam, you will get into trouble. The 6th sister and the 7th brother were called into mother's room not long ago. After that, there was a rumor that both of them were going to meet the trainees. Lee Chul sighed and said with a smile, what, planning to exclude me from the promotion exam? Lee Soo-hyun angrily said, it's clear that it's impossible, but no one can predict what they will do, that's what's truly frightening. Aren't you feeling anything, being such an oddball? The 6th sister and the 7th brother, both of them are really scary. He just said, if you're trying to warn me, it's too late. Since the quarterly evaluation exam, those troublesome incidents have been happening continuously. Lee Soo-hyun looked bewildered, Lee Chul slowly remembered, every time there was an evaluation, we were given low-quality equipment, or the training content was intentionally left out to create discrimination. Recently, I even heard that someone had approached Bosung. Lee Soo-hyun instructed, I have already given the class some advice, more or less. This time, I will compete fairly with you and win. I will definitely get first place and make you call me, big sister. Lee Chul couldn't understand why you were so obsessed with that way of addressing. At this moment, a sound rang out, is everyone here yet? Everyone slowly turned to look back. The warden appeared and said, "Today marks the final quarterly review of the year. I will convey the content and schedule related to the promotion exam for this course. As you know, the end-of-year grades and achievements in the promotion exam will determine the advancement, and this exam will take place at Gate Y7, about 3 kilometers north of Gashung." Lee Chul frowned. Gate? He pondered, having anticipated that the exam would undergo changes, but never expected it to be the Star Gate. The warden continued, "Inside the gate, there will be name tags engraved with the word, Sunmu. Each participant will also possess a name tag. If it is taken away, it will be considered as if they have died and are eliminated from the competition. Other than that, there are no additional rules. Try to collect as many name tags as possible. This promotion exam this time is not simply a test of combat ability, it should be called a war of conquest instead." Lee Chul smiled. "I see. I understand, seizing the name tag, snatching the name tag, and surviving. Losing the name tag is synonymous with death, and the number of name tags held will determine the score in the exam. A simple rule. But what is called dealing with death is actually a trap. Even if someone's identity badge is stolen, outsiders cannot know it, so just go ahead and seize or search for hidden identity badges. As long as there is an identity badge, it doesn't matter who it is taken from or where it is found." Chul calculated. Moreover, this is a personal match involving even the second-year students, so surely someone has already interfered in this matter. A promotion exam takes place inside the gate, isolated from the outside world, with no evidence left behind. Regardless of what happens to a child of the beasts, this is definitely an opportunity they cannot miss. Lee Chul smiled, starting to contemplate, but it also meant that he could take advantage of it in his own way. In the evening in the room, a pair of feet swayed with humming. A voice rang out, "What are you doing?" The seventh son of the Sunmu clan, Lee Jae-hik, heard the person in front of him say, "Just watching his beloved younger brother work up a sweat." Lee Jae-hik instructed, "You lunatic," to the person in front of him. Lee Sol-ah, the sixth daughter of the Sunmu clan, coldly replied, "This kid dares to speak to his sister as an equal?" She said, "Indeed, compared to this sibling, the youngest one is much cuter, acting like a little rabbit." She laughed and said the last word, making people want to wring her neck. Lee Sol-ah said, "Hey, more than that, what do you think?" Jae-hik just asked, "What do you mean?" She replied, "What else, it's your mother's order, isn't it?" Jae-hik sighed and said, "She said it's time to evaluate." Lee Sol-ah muttered as she threw the knife on the table, "I don't like this at all, a bastard child wearing the badge of the main family. A person who doesn't know their place daring to be so arrogant." She firmly placed the knife on the table and said, "So I will personally teach her a lesson." Relying on her weak eldest brother and still being so presumptuous, she must be made to understand where she stands.